At this time, if we could have, just a moment. Before I pass it on to Councilmember Henderson for the invocation, to introduce Pastor Keith Butler is here today. We actually met recently, sir. Good to see you.
Yes, good morning.
Councilmember Henderson, I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you. Okay. Keith Butler, he's been in the ministry for over 20 years with 17 years of experience as pastor at Logos Baptist Church located in Miami. And he is now starting his 15th journey at New Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church. Please welcome Pastor Keith.
Please stand and remain standing for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Yes, sir. Pastor Butler, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Eternal God, our Father, we thank you now for life, health, and strength. We thank you for allowing all of us to be able to wake up in dry beds and dry homes, dry streets, knowing that there are some who was not as fortunate as us. And, oh God, I know that had this storm been even a mile to one side, this will be a different story. But I'm convinced now more than ever before that you are a huge fan of Tampa. And that's why we're such a huge fan of you. We pray that you would bless our city, bless all of our city members, council, men and women. We thank you for our mayor. We thank you for her professionalism and her intellect. But God, most importantly, I pray for those who make all of them look good, including our chief of police and chief of fire and emergency management, and that's the staff working for the mayor of Miami-Dade County. I know who do all the work, and I know who gets all of the glory. So I pray for the staff family that you would bless all of them as they work diligently to make all of the leaders look good. And finally, God, I pray that you would allow all of us to leave here better than we came. Allow us to agree without being disagreeable. And God, let us remember that your word said that the greatest among us are those that serve. So we pray that we will serve. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. This is why I get frustrated. Yes, sir. Councilmember Carlson.
I just wanted to say real fast, thank you, sir. I've had some complaints from constituents who are of the Jewish faith that we were meeting on Rosh Hashanah, and I just wanted to personally apologize. We all looked at the calendar and we missed it, and it's, huge apology. Some folks were upset because they couldn't participate, and every year we usually avoid major holidays, and we just missed it this year, and I'll personally be one that will take responsible for it, but we'll work hard not to do it again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I absolutely agree. Councilmember, I'm sorry, if we could have roll call?
Carlson. Here. Hurtak. Here. Clendenin.
Here.
Henderson.
Present.
Vera. Miranda.
Here.
Maniscalco.
Here.
We have physical quorum.
Thank you very much. Mr. Shelby?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of City Council, members of the public, Martin Shelby, City Council Attorney. Good morning and welcome to today's meeting. I will be brief. With regard to the rules of decorum, we would ask that you support the council in the conduct of city business today by avoiding any disruptive behavior or noises or comments, personal attacks on the public or the council or the city staff. Please note that if you're here to speak during general public comment, there are speaker cards out front that we ask that you fill out and place in the box, 1 card per speaker. Cards are accepted until the start of general public comment. Each person submitting a card will be recognized by name to approach and speak. A 3-minute time limit applies. Please print legibly because names that cannot be read will not be called. Now, if you're here to speak at a public hearing, use the sign-in sheet instead. And again, if you need assistance, please see city staff. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. May I have motion to adopt the minutes from the September 19, 2024 meeting. We have a motion from Councilmember Miranda, second from Councilmember Clendenin. All in favor? Aye. Aye. And I echo what Councilmember Carlson said, and a Shana Tova to those that celebrate, including my wife and many of my friends. All right, we're going to go through the approval of the agenda and the addendum to the agenda. I'm going to begin, after we do this, I'm going to begin with an administration update. Chief Bennett is here. This is regarding the storm. This we'll do right after we approve the agenda. I'll ask the chief how much time he needs, and then we'll go to council members. Item number 1, there's a request to continue this to a future date. I believe Councilmember Vieira is going to have that date, so I'm just going to come back to that when he arrives. He'll be arriving momentarily. He's in traffic. Item number 14, I have a memo from Mr. Carl Brody that we withdraw this item. Can I get a motion to that effect? Motion from Councilmember Clendenin, second from Councilmember Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Item number 41, we have a memo from Chief Bennett requesting that this item be pulled from consent and be heard under staff reports. We have a motion from Councilmember Clendenin, second from Councilmember Henderson. All in favor? Aye. And then item number 70, I'd ask that this be moved up and be heard at a time certain of 11:45 a.m. We have a motion from Councilmember Henderson. Do we have a second? Second from Councilmember Clendenin. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, item number, I'm going to go through staff reports, administration update. We already discussed that. We'll have that after we approve the agenda. Items number 76, we have, yes? Yeah, I am. Item number 76, this is a $114 million item. Would you like staff present?
They have a PowerPoint.
Okay, so yes on 76. How about, with 77, there's a memo to continue this to November 21st. We have a motion from Councilmember Clendenin, second from Councilmember Miranda. All in favor? Aye. Item number 77 has been continued to November 21st, 2024. Item number 78.
The staff has asked us to continue, so I move that we continue it to, they didn't give us a date. What date is the?
November 3rd, under staff
or
reports?
November 7th, or is it
I'm sorry, 7th.
November 7th? I
November
move that we
7th?
Continue this to November 7th.
78, there's a motion to continue 78 to November 7th under
And-
staff report. Second from Councilmember Clendenin. Yes, sir?
And just for the public to know, anybody who from Harbor Island is watching the meeting and is interested in the Harbor Island streetlight issue, this is the issue. The staff has asked us to move it, so we're now moving it to November 7th.
All right. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Item number 79, there's a request to continue to December 5th. Councilmember Hurtak?
Yes, this is my motion, and I've actually asked for them to provide a written report on October 17th, I believe. Yes, October 17th, a written report.
All right, so we're going to continue item 79 to October 17th. Motion from Councilmember, as a written report from Councilmember Hurtak, second from Councilmember Clendenin. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Item number 80, we have, yes?
I talked to Ms. Feely. She would much prefer that we, since this is monthly, that we just move it to the next month. She did say that the kickoff was awesome, and she just wanted to thank everyone for that, but this is, she's
Do you have a date to continue this?
it's every month, so it goes to just the next.
All
So
right.
we'll just cancel this
All
one,
right.
I suppose,
So we'll just, all right, we have a motion and a second. Motion from
Motion from
Councilmember
me.
Hurtak, second from Councilmember Carlson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, this is regarding a verbal report. Mr. Vasky will be present for 81, so that's a yes. Item number 82, Councilmember Hurtak.
Yes, I spoke to them on the status of Grand Cathedral, and no, they have not fixed any of the violations, but they are in progress. I have a longer motion that will come for this, but I just haven't had time this week. We've been focusing on recovery, so that will come later. So for right now, we're just going to table this.
We're going to table 82, but you're going to make a motion under new business?
Next week. Yeah, receive and file.
All right,
Yeah,
we have a
that's-
motion to receive and file 82 from Councilmember Hurtak, second from Councilmember Clendenin. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Item number 83, there's a request to continue this to December 19th. We have motion from Councilmember Clendenin, second from Councilmember Miranda. All in favor? Aye. And then the written staff reports, are we good to receive and file 84, 85, 86, and,
87, they asked for
87
continuance.
So can we get a motion to receive and file 84, 85, and 86? Motion from
Yes.
Councilmember Clendenin, second from Councilmember Miranda. All in favor?
Aye.
And a request to continue
So moved.
87 to November 7th, 2024 by Councilmember Clendenin, Carlson, second by Councilmember Clendenin. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Yes, thank you. Okay, in regards to the administration update, we're still gonna have it once we begin staff reports, but this is gonna be with CFO Dennis Rogero. He's not available right now, so we're gonna have more later. We're gonna talk about the storm now.
What about number one?
I have it here.
Okay.
Number one, we have a request by TPD in conjunction with Councilmember Vieira, he's aware of this, to continue item number 1 to November 7th. Can we get a motion? Motion from Councilmember Miranda, second from Councilmember Vieira, all in favor?
Aye.
And let the record show that Councilmember Vieira is here. All right, may I have a motion to adopt the agenda and the addendum? Can I get a motion? Motion from Councilmember Miranda, do we have a second? Second from Councilmember Clendenin, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Is Mr. Steve Simon here? He was running late in traffic, so we're gonna hold item number 2. I'm sorry, we're gonna go to an administration update regarding the storm now. Chief Bennett, you're here, I see TPD is here. So if you wanna come on up, sir, please state your name.
Morning, John Bennett, Chief of Staff, Council. Good morning to our public. As Chief Tripp and I believe our emergency manager comes up, I just want to say from experience, 39 years ago, with 7 months in police uniform, I evacuated overnight Palmetto Beach area for Hurricane Helena. It never came onto the state, of course. I've never seen anything like this in nearly my 40 years of service of what we're dealing with. So hopefully we can give you a brief update, and then staff is here to answer questions on our current state of preparedness, of course, mitigation, response, and recovery. Chief Tripp.
Good morning, Council. Barbara Tripp, Fire Chief for the City of Tampa. First and foremost, I just want to not only thank the community, but thank all of the leaders within the City of Tampa who's been working prior to the storm coming, who was working overnight during the storm, and the ones who are continuing to work, for all of the men and women that's out there in all departments within the City of Tampa have been working extremely hard to make sure our community is put back together, and just know that we love them and we're doing everything we can to assist them. With that being said, I'm going to let the Emergency Manager Director, Johnny Tappas, kind of give an overview of what took place. But just to put a lot of people at ease with a lot of the things that's going on, and as far as the conversation, the City of Tampa, of course, is always under the chapter of the 252, which we have to abide by the rules with Hillsborough County. So when they declare something, that's when we put things into order. So a lot of the needs and the requests that we put in over the last week has been coming through the county as well as the state. So just want to thank the mayor for her leadership, and of course hanging out with us over at the EOC and making sure the men and women, and as well as the whole executive staff, the mayor's executive staff, who made sure that our employees was taken care of, and we'll continue to work with the community. With that said, I will turn it over to Johnny Tappas to give us information about the storm and what we're doing to prepare.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir, please state your name.
John Tapsis, Emergency Management Director with the City of Tampa. Good morning, Council, Public Administration. I'm here today to give an update of what transpired with Hurricane Helena over the last week, what the response was, and what we're currently continuing to do to support the community throughout their recovery. Obviously, this has been the worst storm since 1921 for the City of Tampa, the Tarpon Springs hurricane that hit us. Storm surge over 7 feet, unprecedented since that time in the City of Tampa. Continuing federal, state resources have been deployed throughout the community, but we'll give an overview of what's been transpiring. Just wanted to talk quickly about the timeline of events. As Chief Tripp stated, with Statute 252, there are emergency management powers that are embedded with 67 counties in the state of Florida. So local states of emergency, evacuation orders, things of that nature that do fall on Hillsborough County. So to play out that timeline, the protective actions we took before the storm occurred, the response actions we took that night into the morning to save lives and property, and then our preliminary damage assessment, as well as the ongoing recovery efforts that are going on in the community currently. So next up, I'll give us the timeline of what transpired at the city of Tampa, Hillsborough County, and then the state of Florida. On September 21st, we, in our shop, as an Office of Emergency Management, Tampa Fire Rescue, we're monitoring tropical systems throughout the year. When June 1st to November 30th happens, we're monitoring the system. We're in close contact with National Weather Service. We started getting reports of the tropical disturbance beginning September 21st. September 24th, Tropical Storm Helena did develop. Then on September 24th, we had also tropical storm watches. September 25th, storm surge warnings were issued by our National Weather Service, expecting 5 to 8 feet of storm surge. Hillsborough County did issue that level A evacuation order as we were all in a local state of emergency at that time. September 26th, it had developed into a hurricane, and it was expected to move north and rapidly intensify in the Gulf of Mexico, and it was expected to stay about 140 miles west of the city of Tampa as a large major hurricane, and it did make landfall at approximately 11:10 p.m. near Perry, Florida, in the Big Bend area. September 27th, significant surge impacts began throughout the community that night into the early morning. And large-scale rescue response efforts were throughout that night and morning to save lives and protect property. Before the storm occurs, we implement our emergency management plans at the city of Tampa, as well as our department hurricane plans. Multiple weather briefings that I know you all are included on were distributed, as well as our situation reports on those protective actions. Those department protective actions were put in place, including their checklist to protect our assets, as well as other response efforts before the storm. We activated Know Your Role for emergency positions for our emergency personnel to work such as staffing, debris, and other items such as that. The Tampa Fire Rescue, Tampa Police Department hurricane operational plans were implemented, as well as sandbags before the storm. We distributed 47,000 sandbags before the storm to those residents. And when that evacuation order was made by Hillsborough County, as you can see in the photo, Tampa Police Department does do door-to-door announcements to ensure those residents are notified, as well as our Alert Tampa notification system and public messaging to ensure our residents know to evacuate those level A evacuation zones. We also mobilized our emergency staffing and equipment. We had to staff Middleton as our evacuation shelter for the general public, as well as Irwin Tech for our special needs shelter. Again, that evacuation level A order was mandated by Hillsborough County. In those shelters, we had just over 1,500 shelter clients that rode out the storm there, as well as 54 pets. We also implemented our emergency fuel plan, feeding plan, activated the Citizen Information Center, and did a robust amount of public messaging throughout, before the storm and throughout it. Then going into Thursday night, Friday early morning, as the surge began to rise in many areas in our community, high water rescues and the response took place with Tampa Police Department, Tampa Fire Rescue, flood street response and barricades to block off those areas, as well as getting individuals out of the evacuation, the surge area that did not evacuate during that time. We also had our emergency drone deployment to get initial assessments at daylight hours, and then down power line mitigation and restoration of our push teams going throughout the city to identify those damages that occurred and quickly identify down power lines to TICO, who's embedded with us at the Emergency Operations Center, so they can send out their teams to mitigate that. We completed our preliminary damage assessment in 2 days. It was a lot of great work went on during the season on preparedness for this, and it all came together with great technology packages and training we did back in May. But overall, we had 854 affected residential structures, over 1,500 minor, over 1,900 major, and 34 destroyed residential buildings in the city of Tampa through our assessment. We also had numerous public buildings, parks, infrastructure also damaged from this storm. Again, unprecedented storm surge, over 7 feet in some areas that caused a lot of this damage. We have to roll these numbers up to Hillsborough County as part of Statute 252, and we sent those estimates in yesterday. We're looking at an estimate of $77 million in public damages currently, which we're expecting that to grow. And then on the residential and commercial damages that were documented, we're looking at over $500 million in private damage from this storm. Ongoing recovery that's continuing on. Major debris cleanup is undergoing in those hardest hit areas: Davis Islands, Palmetto Beach, South of Gandy, West Shore area. Our solid waste teams are continuing through that debris and getting that collection set up at our certified FEMA debris sites. Very large areas of debris being put to those areas. Continuing our infrastructure assessment, and the repairs are ongoing for our infrastructure that was impacted. And for relief efforts, we were able to get with the state immediately post-storm to get these assets into the community quickly. We have comfort stations set up at DeSoto Park and Majari Park over at Davis Islands and Palmetto Beach. And this morning, south of Gandy, we were able to stand up at the Gandy Civic Center. Also a comfort station to get those supplies closer to that community down in South Tampa. Also, immediately after the storm, we had mass feeding operations going on with our partners at Salvation Army and American Red Cross at Davis Islands, Palmetto Beach, Port Tampa, and South of Gandy immediately after the storm. And at the federal level, we have been declared for individual assistance, which is disaster assistance for homeowners, to get them some funding immediately, as well as public assistance to get reimbursement for those damages to the city of Tampa. And then on the business side, the Small Business Administration did declare disaster assistance as well for those low interest bridge loans to get them back up and running as well. Just wanted to end with obviously an incredible response from all the first responders that night, everyone in the Emergency Operations Center to support. I just want to echo, we were largely impacted here, but this is a region-wide impacts. Pinellas County, Pasco County, we're in close contacts throughout the region on the major impacts there, as well as the entire southeast of the United States, going up all the way Georgia, North Carolina. So many of the federal state assets have been stretched during this, but we have been in close communications throughout every day with state, county, and our regional partners to get as much support out to the community as much, and we will be there nonstop. Our team has been working around the clock to get whatever's needed out to the public.
Thank you very much.
And as John has stated, you know, this would have not been effective as it has been, you know, without our community partners and everyone assisting. So we just want to say thank you to everyone. We had additional staff that was on duty that day, and we actually deployed our Urban Search and Rescue Team, which is Florida Task Force 3, that was deployed along with Hillsborough County that went over and helped our neighboring county, which was Pinellas County.
Thank you very much. All right, I'm going to open it up to council members. If we could set the 5-minute timer. Councilmember Clendenin, you asked to be recognized.
Yeah, I was impacted to a much, compared to a lot of folks in Tampa Bay, to a minor degree, but still impacted by the storm significantly. And I just want to say, for the year and a half that I've been on council now, one of the things that I've been most impressed by is the city of Tampa and the staff, the employees of the city of Tampa. Day in and day out for the last year and a half, I've consistently seen the staff of the city step up to the plate when we met challenges. And I can't tell you how impressed I was. I'm actually getting choked up a little bit because of all of this, but how impressed I was after the storm to see so many boots on the ground, everybody rising to the occasion, people that doing different functions in their normal job functions, doing storm assessments. I mean, from the very next morning, coming out, seeing them all over the city. I think from our first responders to our ATU employees, which we're going to recognize one today, to everybody that's in wastewater and fresh water and, across every business line in the city of Tampa, everybody really stood up and met the challenge, and I'm really appreciative of the work that all of our city employees have done for the residents of the city of Tampa. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you so much. I just want to commend you all for everything that you've done in the light of this hurricane, and really appreciate the report. I want to say also kudos to the City of Tampa sanitation crew. I read a post on social media from a citizen that just really touched me. He said, kudos to the Tampa City Kudos to City of Tampa sanitation crews. These hard workers have cleared so many tons of debris, much of it by hand, over the past few days. It actually left hope inspiring, watching our homes and streets inundated with sludge water, these furnishings and cabinets and drywall and so many other things. Just wanted to call them warriors that jumped in to, clean up so quickly, in light of everything, even possibly, things happening in their own personal lives. So thank you to all city employees. The setups at DeSoto in Palmetto Beach, just everything that we do, it really is the staff, and I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Councilmember Hurtak, Councilmember Miranda, Councilmember Vieira.
I do want to echo the thanks to the staff. I mean, you seem to be working round the clock, and I greatly appreciate it because the areas that are hardest hit, absolutely. And I just want to also, make sure I recognize some of the areas that were hit that we haven't talked about. I live up on near the Hillsborough River, and very close friends lost quite a bit. So folks along the river as well, whatever we can do for folks up in the northern part. What I'm hearing is that no one's talking about the Hillsborough River overflowing too. So not that y'all aren't working up there, but just they would like a little, what else can we do for the folks who were impacted in that area? Because there's a lot of low-lying areas that were, as the storm surge went, once it hit the dam, they had nowhere to go. Like, it can't keep going. So they had some serious inundation. But I want to appreciate staff, but I really also want to talk about the community. Folks came out for their neighbors, and it has been just overwhelming, the offers, the help that we've seen, and I'm sure that you're seeing the very same thing, and I just want to say thank you so much to our community for coming together and supporting you as well as the staff. I know also that some of it has been difficult because people are traumatized, and so some of that trauma can come on to staff. I know that, but I just want to appreciate how well you all have been able to look past that and just absolutely help every single person. So, and I want to say to staff as well, just to take care of yourselves too. That's the only way that we can keep going, is to make sure that we're focused on ourselves as well. And I again just want to reiterate how much I appreciate the support. And there will be more time to talk about what else we can do, how else we can improve. But for right now, in the thick of things, I just wanted to say thank you.
Councilmember Miranda, Councilmember Vieira.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, what you've heard before, I'll reiterate the same thing. You got the ATU that keeps the Tampa running. You have you guys that keep the Tampa safe. You got the police department to make sure that everybody's aware of what's going on, like yourselves. And what we're looking at, in my opinion anyway, is something different. I have never seen so many storms form in the Gulf of Mexico as this year. And they start out as a very low pressure thing, and they become a major hurricane. The answer is why. There's only one resolution as to why. We are taking not good care of the environment, and we are causing our own demise. The world, I'm not talking about the citizens of Tampa. We've been very lucky in the city of Tampa, and you guys have all done, ladies and gentlemen, in all the divisions of the city, a fantastic job in making sure everybody was safe and also in the cleanup afterwards. However, just think how lucky we were that our name was not Asheville, North Carolina. And you see what it can do to destroy a complete city. And these are the things that keep us going and working hard. But unless we change and start building differently, and I'm not comparing ourselves to any other country in the world, but when you go to a third world country, even in the islands, yeah, the outskirts get hammered and they don't come back at all. But those houses are built with what? Cement and rebar. They do not leave the ground. They do not burn very easily. There's a lot of things we have to look at to change. I'm not saying it should be overnight, but this whole country's got to start looking at the environment and making sure that in the future, your great-grandchildren and your future generations of Earth are well taken care of. We have not done a good job, but you guys have done a good job. But in general, we Americans take life and keep on going. We have to make some changes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Vieira.
Thank you very much, and I echo the sentiments. You know, it's hard to, find words when we go out and we speak to people whose lives have been devastated, and y'all know that better than I do, because y'all have been on the ground a billion times more than anybody else. What words do you say to somebody who's just lost everything? When you go in life, you have all sorts of responsibilities. You're raising your family, you're doing your job, you're paying your taxes, all sorts of responsibilities, and then something like this comes, and you go, it's hard to even fathom. I echo the words that everyone said on all of our city employees, sanitation, police, fire, everybody, just amazing. Our job is to support y'all in the work that you do, to encourage you guys as much as we can, because again, this is a storm of the century. It really is, and to see what people are going through now, when you go out there on the ground and you see what folks are going through, you talk to you talk to institutions that are there to help people. Think about our teachers, our public school and private school teachers who are coming back to work. Some of them have lost everything. They're dealing with classrooms, 20, 30 kids, many of whose families have lost everything. Families who were taking big hits before this and now literally went through a hurricane where they've lost so much. I think about our churches. We talk to churches like Christ the King, our friends over at South Tampa Fellowship, et cetera, who are dealing with on the ground with some of the worst things. I think of a nice gentleman that a lot of us went out to meet with our offices, Tom Reynolds over at Palmetto Beach, who guided us through that community. And to have somebody who just lost every material possession they have, and you try to give them words of comfort, where do you go from that? And to have them reach out to you and go, look, I'm not used to asking for help, but this is what I need. It's stuff that'll probably take, I think, years for people to process through. And something that Councilwoman Hurtak said is very right, which is two things. Number one, we're going to talk about how we can improve as a city on something like this, because something like this is not normal course and scope of things that happen in the city of Tampa. So obviously we're going to talk about how future councils, future administrations, et cetera, can build on the work that's been done, the work that we're saluting everybody for. I think that's important. What we as council members can do individually in the future, and also to talk about all areas that have been impacted. You guys are out there at every single area that's been impacted, but to make sure that our friends in the media and other places talk about all communities that have been impacted. I've talked to people at Palmetto Beach, Davis Island, West Shore, all over, and it's, again, it's devastating. You try to have words for people. You try to pray for them. You try to think about them. You try to go out there and roll up your sleeves and work. And to see the institutions on the ground, groups like Feeding Tampa Bay, Operation Barbecue Relief, different churches, mosques, synagogues, houses of worship, who are, again, people. Just yesterday I was with a church, and the pastors, they lost tons over at Davis Island, and they're out there helping people because they're Christians and they're good people. So, again, you don't have words, but you try to have words. But again, just thank you guys. Thank you to everybody in the city of Tampa, all of our employees, Hillsborough County, state of Florida, everywhere, everybody coming together to help folks out. So just from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Councilmember Carlson?
Yeah, I want to echo thanks to all the staff. I know folks didn't get much sleep, if any, and worked without showers and other things while their own homes and families were being affected. And thanks to the first responders and all the other folks who worked so hard. And I think we as a community can never really say thank you enough. Thank you also to the neighbors helping neighbors. One of the things that makes America great is that people volunteer for things to help each other, and we saw that on a massive scale here. Tampa's in the last 100 years or so never faced any recovery effort like this, and we see pictures and videos of other cities that, like New Orleans, that get hit, and it's surreal driving through South Tampa, some rich neighborhoods, some poor neighborhoods, and and the devastation is unbelievable. And to see one street that's different from another by the luck of where the water flowed. I was one of the lucky ones that it didn't flow my way, but we tried to help other folks as well. There's, as my colleague said, there's a lot of time to talk about what we could do differently next time. One thing my constituents asked is to make sure we have a fire truck on Davis Island. And we can talk about that later. I don't want to open up that, but I started getting phone calls at 4 o'clock in the morning because the one house that had the Tesla in it caught on fire. And we need to look at regulations. Like, hate to throw this out, but do we mandate that if we think there's going to be a storm surge that people have to move their battery powered devices out of the ground level? We have to seriously think about that, because even if people evacuate, if you get inundated with salt water and the buildings catch on fire because of a battery operated bicycle or motorcycle or car, in Davis Islands, there was one very expensive house that burned down, but it had a lot of expensive houses around it. The other thing that's happening is that, even though there are a lot of very wealthy families in South Tampa, there are a lot of people that have been there for generations, especially the historic black community that was formerly longshoremen in Port Tampa. Many of those families have had houses for multiple generations, and because they own the houses, they don't have insurance, many of them. But now we're going to lose a lot of that housing stock. The easiest thing to do is someone will go down, tear down one of the old houses and build a new McMansion. And the missing middle is important, displacing seniors and others who will be displaced. I don't know what the solutions are on that, but we've got to really pay attention. Whatever we think of housing and the shortage, we've got to make sure we protect the missing middle that we have. Thank you to staff, especially Chief of Staff, for working with the neighbors in Port Tampa and Bayside West and others who really wanted to have a comfort station nearby them. I know staff spent half a day or more yesterday, and they started at 7 o'clock this morning, going to the Gandy Civic Association providing services. So thank you for that. There's trash pickup on a massive scale. People don't realize that one family's house goods might fill up a whole truck, and then the truck's got to go and come back. Larry Washington and his team were fantastic. There were neighborhoods, lower income neighborhoods in South Tampa that felt like they were neglected. Larry deployed people immediately, and we were able to take pictures and tell people they're in your neighborhood, they're working with you too, and we have equity in the trash pickup. It had a big difference in boosting the morale of people. One of the things I mentioned before after hurricanes is we have to think of the role of council. We've never had a recovery effort like this, but we need to think about the role of council. Thank you to the mayor for calling me last night. I had a long conversation with her about it. I had a long conversation with Chief of Staff and Andrea. An example, there's a 1-800 call center that has presumably a script that they can tell people what to do, how to get them resources. We should have that script with City Council and our staff. We should probably be trained in it. I've worked on a lot of major recovery efforts in other cities, and there should be a standard talking points so we're all on the same page. There should be an FAQ. But if we're deployed answering questions of people who have been hurt in the community, we shouldn't just give them an 800 number. We should be able to answer their questions to the extent we can. And, all of us have been out there seeing that. We need to work on the recovery apparatus. We have a well-oiled apparatus to talk about a hurricane coming and to talk about cleaning up, but what we need is a recovery apparatus. We also need to talk about sustainability, raising the level of homes, maybe putting up barriers, other things, and I think maybe we should have a workshop about that. Last two things, one of the citizens that I was helping, she has a 100-year-old home, and she has a child with disabilities. She had a very expensive equipment for her child. All of it was wiped out. The child can't stay on the ground floor because the area is damaged. So she has to physically carry the child up to the top floor. And I want to thank Raquel for helping her yesterday.
Thank you very much.
I think we need to work on all these issues and look forward to working with the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to everybody, everybody that's been mentioned, that's been involved. We haven't seen this since 1921, as you mentioned. And that was, it's been over a century. And we've talked about this over the years. When Irma came through in 2017, I thought that was going to be the storm because of the magnitude. A lot of people didn't expect this because we've gotten so many close calls, and it's, Bayshore gets water, but not like this. West Tampa at the river, houses are ruined. Davis Islands, Port Tampa, it's unbelievable. It's a war zone in certain areas. I left the house when the sun came up Friday morning to go out into the areas that I could. Davis Island wasn't open yet. Bayshore still had water. Going down Southwest Shore to Gandy. We ended up going there later in the day. Davis Island's in the evening. My aide and I were in Palmetto Beach yesterday. A gentleman, Tom Reynolds, was mentioned. His family's been in Palmetto Beach for over 100 years. 2 months ago, he and I were talking about his family's history here, going back to the founding of Ybor City. We had calls yesterday from south of Gandy, multiple people over the days. I called the mayor a couple of days ago to do something south of Gandy. It was mentioned they're opening up as of 7 a.m. this morning at the Gandy Civic Center. I talked to the chief of staff. Chief of staff has been phenomenal in keeping us updated, continuous communication, nonstop. I've tried to do what I could via social media to share information for, if it was a private organization like Lowe's Southdale Mabry, they were helping. The American Red Cross, numbers to call, solid waste pickup, what the city was doing, trying to do something, again, because you can't beat Mother Nature. When you get a Category 3, 4 hurricane and you get storm surge, it's terrifying. I saw one video from a friend of ours, and it was the water has reached, the front of my property. The water has reached the front of my steps. The water's on the first floor. The last photo was her taking a photo from the staircase, and the whole bottom floor is flooded up to like 4 feet. And that was just one house, and there's so many. The house in Davis Island that was burned down, we went by there. The Merrymakers Club in Davis Island, the building's been there for 100 years. When I was there, they said, we've been pumping for 3 hours. I have video. It's just the whole ground is saturated. And then the saddest thing is everybody's belongings on the front curb. It's either mattresses, sofas, children's toys, and people looking and feeling defeated. People sitting out there without electricity. This is Friday, at daybreak. And rich people, poor people, middle-class people. I mean, I've talked to so many people that were affected, and this was minor. This was a minor storm surge. It was awful, but it could be a lot worse. And again, when we were hit in 1921, Davis Islands didn't exist like it did today. It wasn't developed. Palmetto Beach was there. Port Tampa City was there. The houses along the Hillsborough River, like in West Tampa, they didn't exist yet. Now there's this development. And not to get into other things, but there's a lot of development that comes to this community. And there's, we see how busy our cases are with rezoning and so many things. We have to be very mindful and very careful. And, a word of caution to developers. We are along the water. Look at what happens. And it's catastrophic damage. I saw a number of $500 million in damage. So, again, as we move forward as a city and developing, we have to be very careful because look at the damage. I mean, it's, again, everybody's been affected. It's not just the rich, the poor. You can't, when the storm surge comes in and there's no light and there's no power and you just hear the rushing of the water, it's terrifying. And that's what, the people that I've talked to, it's like you feel helpless. It's, when does the water stop and where do we go from here? So again, thank you to everybody involved. I know you're exhausted because you've been working nonstop around the clock, you, your team, all the different departments. So thank you very much for this update. Thank you. All right, we're going to go to the ATU presentation, then to item number 3. Mr. Steve Simon is here. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Good morning.
Hey, before I started, I want to also mention that, as we talked about the Jewish holidays, also that a couple days before we meet again, October 7th, will have come a year anniversary since the attacks on Israel, and how deeply I know so many folks in our community were impacted with their loved ones, and that over 100 hostages are still being held in Gaza, and how much I feel for those folks. And I think it's a time to talk about that during this period of the holy days that are coming up for our Jewish community. That being said, I want to say hello to my good friend Steve Simon, president of ATU, the man who represents the folks in the city that have kept the city going
and helped with the recovery in the city of Tampa during this time of emergency and natural disasters. Thank you to you and all the folks that you represent for the city of Tampa. What an important job the folks that you work with do for us. Thank you so much. He's going to introduce our employee that we're recognizing today, Nicole, but I'll hand it off to Stephen to talk about that.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. If I could take a point of personal privilege, I would like to thank the city of Tampa for sending out an email yesterday notifying ATU members that if they've been impacted by Helene, they need to reach out to me immediately for assistance. Secondly, I would like to say that I lost that thought, so I'll come back to that. So, good morning, council. Good morning, city of Tampa. I'm Steve Simon, the president of the Amalgamated Transit Union, Local 1464, and we keep the city of Tampa running. And I'm happy to be here this morning in order to introduce you to the ATU Employee of the Month, Miss Nicole Williams. Ms. Williams is the only person, let me say that again. Ms. Williams is the only person in the city who carries the title of subrogation specialist, but she does the job of many. You may ask, what does the title mean? Well, when an injury occurs to a city staff person, or when city property is damaged by a third party or destroyed through no fault of our own, Ms. Williams works to recover any money owed to the city and any money spent due to the damage or injury. She investigates the incident, collects information, and works to make sure no funds are spent where they should not be spent. Over the past 5 years, she has single-handedly reclaimed nearly $4 million on the city's behalf. An unsung hero. It would be a bit higher, but 2020 was not as active. The funds are placed back into the city's general fund and used as part of the overall budget. She is our hero, and she does it with a smile and quiet wisdom. She's a mom and a grandmom. She has served the city and citizens of Tampa for 19 years. And we thank you, Nicole, for your participation in keeping the city of Tampa running. And on behalf of ATU Local 1464, I would like to present you with this award. I'd also like to read a part of a letter from the mayor, if you don't mind. Okay, great. Congratulations on being selected as the Amalgamated Transit Union's Employee of the Month for your professionalism, strong work ethics, and for going above and beyond in all aspects in your position as a subrogation specialist. For nearly a decade, you have demonstrated the ability to navigate complex cases by researching, analyzing, and coordinating recovery efforts to ensure effective cost management of subrogation claims. You have reclaimed nearly $4 million over the past 5 years, and these funds are placed back into the city's general fund and used as part of the overall budget. You are an asset to the Human Resources Department and the city of Tampa, and you set a shining example for others to follow. It is employees like you, Nicole, that make me proud to serve as mayor. Thank you for your dedication and service. Sincerely, Mayor Jane. Thank you.
So we have a couple more people who would like to talk.
Good morning, Council. Kelly Austin, Director of Human Resources and Talent Development. I would like to thank the ATU for allowing these employees to be recognized, Council for indulging us and giving us some time in front of the public, and thank you to the public for, celebrating with us. Nicole is, and I'm going to let Valerie speak very briefly, but just quickly, Nicole is exactly what you want if you can build a City of Tampa employee. This is the playbook in which you should build it from. She comes to work every day. She comes to serve the citizens by proxy of By recouping these dollars, you hear what comes back into the general fund. These are fire trucks we can purchase, police cars we can purchase. These are parks we can improve. She does that every single day. One person, just in the last fiscal year alone, collected over $1 million on behalf of the city. When Valerie came into the city, when she and I started working together, we recognized that this was an underutilized person. And through Valerie's tenacious input, we elevated Nicole's position, and it's really taken off from there. But Nicole would do this position regardless of what the title was. I only see Nicole in the hall when we pass each other on the way to the ladies' room because her head is down and she's working all the time. She serves the city well, and we are blessed to have her. And I just thank everyone for giving us the opportunity to recognize someone in human resources, because we tend to not want to be recognized. We like to be behind the scenes, but we do serve those who are out in the front lines, and the way we do it is really, really monumental. Valerie.
Good morning, Council. Valerie Horton, Risk Manager for the City of Tampa. When Nicole was notified that she had been selected, she walked in my office and said, "What did you do?" And I just told her, I am so proud of her. Every single day she walks into our office and she goes to her desk, and she definitely keeps her head down. She is a mom and a grandmom, and you see her sister, her 2 children, and her grandson behind us. She will come in every now and then and bring a video of her grandson. I saw the one where he kept locking the door on the first day of school so he didn't want to get out because he didn't want to get out of the car. But she loves them. She loves what she does. And I just wanted to make sure this unsung hero was brought up front just for a little while so that everyone understands what she does every day on behalf of the City of Tampa and its citizens. Nicole, we're proud of you.
Thank you.
So Nicole, I'm going to have to be dealing with insurance companies for the next, I don't know. I think I need somebody of your tenacity to represent me to recover some money for myself. So it's great to have somebody like you to come up and be able to recognize. On behalf of the folks that work with the Tampa City Council, we'd like to present you with the Tampa City Council Commendation presented to HU Employee of the Month, Nicole Williams. Congratulations. And before I'll let you speak after these folks are down here, we have some members of the community that would like to recognize you as well.
Hi, I'm Mary Dillon. I represent the Straz Center for the Performing Arts. On behalf of the Straz, I want to present you with 2 tickets to a Broadway show coming up. Please enjoy yourself. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning, Ms. Williams. Good morning, Council. Good morning, Mr. Simon. I'm Grace Gonzalez. I'm here on behalf of the Gonsmart family and the 1905 family of restaurants. Thank you so much for your commitment to our city of Tampa. We want to present you with a gift card to enjoy at any of our restaurants, the Columbia and Ybor, Ulele. Columbia Cafe now has goody goody recipes. Please enjoy yourself. Thank you so much for everything you do.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning. Jill Witecki on behalf of Tampa Theater. Thank you for letting us celebrate you today, and we hope you and your family will come see us at the theater with an annual membership.
Thank you.
Hands are getting full. Hi, my name is Lori Osborne, and I'm a representative of the Florida Orchestra. And congratulations, and thank you so much for our service, of your service. We wanted to offer you, to you and a guest, tickets to a performance for this season, and you can choose. And we just thank you again so much for your service, and we look forward to seeing you.
Thank you.
Morning, everyone. That's Nicole Dencesario Jr. with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm here on behalf of our COO, Brian Ford. So on behalf of the Glazer family, Brian Ford, and the entire Buccaneers organization, we thank you for all your efforts. And for this, we're presenting you with a football.
Oh my gosh.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You don't get to hold on to those very long. You better hold on to these, though. Steve Michelini, I'm here on behalf of a couple of different folks who'd like to recognize you. One is the Chicho Restaurant Group. They're going to provide you with a gift certificate. You can enjoy yourself, breakfast, lunch, or dinner. On behalf of Jackson's Bistro on Harbor Island, it was good that it was elevated, so the garage had water, but not the restaurant. We're going to provide you with a gift certificate. Enjoy yourself for lunch or dinner. On behalf of the Yummy House China Bistro, high and dry up on North Del Mabry, providing you with a gift certificate. You can enjoy yourself there for lunch or dinner. And on behalf of Meat Market and Old Hyde Park Village, enjoy yourself, lunch or dinner. Congratulations and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Who's going to take all these? I do want to reach out and say, you know, city employees are the backbone of the city, and we congratulate and thank you for all of your service.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Now it's your turn to shine.
Oh, my God.
Everybody, Nicole.
Good morning, City Council.
Good morning.
I don't even know where to start. I would like to thank Kelly Austin, the HR and Talent Development Director, Valerie Horton-Rakes, the Risk Manager, Marcus Charles, the Supervisor, and my coworkers for recognizing me for the Employee of the Month. Words cannot express how thankful I am, and I hope to continue to prove myself as an honorable employee to this department. Thank you for all the support and guidance you're provided. I would like to thank my family and friends for attending this special occasion. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
So, council?
Thank you very much. Congratulations, and thank you to your family. And clearly, you're very loved because there's a lot of people with you here today that they realize and they know how special you are and how valuable you are to the city. Thank you for everything that you do. This is well deserved. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we'll go to item number 3, which is virtual. Mr. Daryl Butler.
You did good, you did good.
Councilman Vieira.
We have Mr. Daryl Butler. There you are. How are you, sir? I'll just let him begin. He's our facilitator for the Racial Reconciliation Committee, which has gone live and is online, and looking forward to hearing from you. Go ahead, sir. And
okay. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Good morning. Please
All
say
right,
your name.
fantastic. And I'm going to get my slides up as soon as I remember how to do that. Hold on one second. Where did I go? I have forgotten how to get my slides up here. Chris, are you able to help me here? All right, well, Councilmember Vieira, if you want to say a few words while I do this, that'd be great.
well, I'll fill in the time, so to speak. Thank you, sir. Yeah, again, we've worked together through a number of meetings on this, and this is for our Racial Reconciliation Committee. I would direct everybody to the website, which is, give me 1 second. And council already has these slides, by the way, so if, yeah, if you can't, sometimes technology doesn't work with us, but there is the Racial Reconciliation Committee website of the city of Tampa, which deals with the members who are going to be there, the committee process. The workshop sessions are ready with the dates, which are going to run from October 22nd, which will be the first one, all the way to February 18th, when there's going to be a public forum input and ways in which we can stay engaged. So if council's fine, if you can't get the slides up, we can provide them later. The council has them printed out. So unless the council has any objection, I'm fine with that.
No, if you want to, anybody, All right, if you just want to go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just go through the conversation then. It's fine. So it is in the city of Tampa's vision to be a diverse and inclusive community, right? And where people will unite to form a caring, empathetic, sustainable community in which every person is valued, where your city confronts the history and legacy of racial injustice and inequality. That's just, of course, not a city of Tampa situation or incident. It's more so in many communities. So the city of Tampa City Council, this wonderful council here, recently created a Racial Reconciliation Committee to review, study, and make recommendations to the City Council and the City of Tampa with respect to 5 designated areas. Those 5 designated areas are affordable and accessible housing, economic development and empowerment and entrepreneurship, opportunity for youth, ignored history, and returning citizens and restoration of rights. So with these 5 areas, the City Council is in consensus that this committee that was formed shall serve as a catalyst for a greater citizen participation in the determination of racial harmony, racial equality, and matters of justice and inclusion for all within the city. And I'll add to that, as I was listening to the impact that you all had, I'm up in Orlando, so I was listening to the impact that you all had from the hurricane. And I understand that in these moments, people come together and overcome what we refer to in my business as diversity tension. We overcome that diversity tension to focus on what's happening in the moment. And that's a wonderful thing. What we want to do with this vision is to not wait for moments of emergency and trauma for us to come together in that capacity. We want to be able to do that on any given day as we manage through and work through our what we call, tension or challenges from race relations, from diversity, from differences in general. So that's kind of, what I think about when we've created the creation of this Racial Reconciliation Committee, is to have that kind of overall vision of coming together in any given day so that we are showing up the best for each other within the city of Tampa. Given that, a team has been created with the Florida Institute of Government at the University of South Florida. They're the project manager of this team. The team also includes myself, Daryl Butler, as the workshop facilitator, where we will have over the next few months, a number of workshops to analyze the situation, to identify any gaps, and to come up with some strategies to close those gaps within those 5 areas. Along with that, we're going to record all of the information. We're going to provide the information through the collaborative labs as a process manager for use of real-time record recording and the number of technologies that they use, so that we're capturing in real time the work of the committee, the work of the workshops, and within these 6 committee workshops, we're aimed to create these strategies for closing the key gaps within these areas. So this collaborative effort, myself, a little bit of background about me. I've been in the diversity, equity, and inclusion, or as I like to refer to as diversity, empowerment, and work-life integration, my DEI, a space for about 25 years total. 23 of those years, I've had my own business, helping organizations, helping communities, helping many across the world, in fact, to create these environments of inclusion where people come together to do better as they work together in whatever entity or structure that they're operating in. So I appreciate the Florida Institute of Government coming in and saying, hey, Daryl, can you help us out to facilitate these workshops? I'm simply facilitating what will already be there, which is the talent of the committee members that have been identified, 13 committee members that have been identified to help us find resolution for building the reconciliation around race relations. With that, the committee schedule you see here, beginning October 22nd will be our first workshop where we'll do a situational analysis around these 5 areas. And then moving on from there, November, December, January, November, December, and January, I should say, will be the workshops themselves where we will tackle 2 of those areas within each of those workshops. That's a little bit tight. We're working with the resources that we have available to us. So those 3 meetings, November, December, and January, will focus on 2 workshop areas with 2 policy areas within each of those workshops. And then on February 18th, we will have the public input forum. Now, the public is invited, of course, to all of the workshops, to all of these meetings. We also have designated one particular meeting for the public input so that before we come up with solutions and recommendations, we will want to include the public input to add to those recommendations that we've worked on through the 3 workshop meetings in November, December, and January. These meetings will be held at the City Center at Hana Avenue, located at 2555 East Hana Ave. You can also find, again, all of this information on the website. Speaking of the website, this is the website here that Councilmember Vera just mentioned. It's a long one there, so you can click on, or you can find it on the City Council website as well. So ways for the public to stay engaged. Again, come to the workshop sessions and listen and observe on those October, November, December, and January meetings. Attend the public forum February 18th, and send your comments. And in any point in time, we have a designated email address to receive comments at rrc@tampagov.net. So we want the public to be engaged. We want all members of the committee to absolutely commit to this process. And we look forward to working with the city of Tampa on this process. And thank you again for trusting in me to help to facilitate you all to some ideas for resolution.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Hurtak.
Okay, thank you. I just want to say thank you so much for coming today and talking. As someone who sat on the city's Charter Review Commission, we had a facilitator, and it was the best thing we did to help us focus on the issues at hand. And as you mentioned some of the topics, I think this is a very good time to do this as we look at how Hurricane Helene is going to change the affordable housing landscape in the city of Tampa. This is a very critical time to talk about this. My one thing that I wanted to ask Councilman Vieira or staff, I am concerned that there's only 3 meetings. Is there a way that we can extend to allow 1 workshop for each topic? I am happy to extend funding.
Yes.
It just seems like, especially now with the hurricane, we have a lot more. More trauma has been opened up for a lot of people, and I really do believe anything possible to extend would be something I would wholeheartedly support.
And if I may, so I appreciate that. These meetings are within the budget that we were given, and I would support additional funding for more meetings. The problem's now going to come with the scheduling, and we can work in that into November, December, January, et cetera. I would be supportive of that. It's just, unfortunately, we're working with the funds that we have. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was going to mention that's a concern. I'd love to see like 2 additional meetings at the very least.
Yes,
I think that would be great, just to make it work. So yeah, I am supportive.
So if you wouldn't mind, since you are spearheading this, if you come to us with a number.
Sure, absolutely.
And then maybe some dates to be able to extend this. I mean, they'll at least be able to get started, but I believe in the importance of this. We cannot shortchange. And quite, to be honest with you, 5 meetings is not enough, but it's a place to begin.
I know, yeah.
And so I just believe that with these gigantic topics, that affordable housing and accessible housing is hours long on its own. And then when you want to combine it with economic development, empower and entrepreneurship, there's just, you can't.
I don't disagree.
So, so yes, I believe, I will support you, I will second you, and I believe that you'll have support
Yes, ma'am.
for
Thank
the
you.
rest of us. And the only other thing I'm going to ask before I pass it on is, he spoke about a website, and it is not on our sheet. So if you wouldn't mind, like, can you, if you can't read it out, just, where can we go to find the website?
It is long. So what I'll do is I'll have Brandon email there, if you don't mind, Brandon, email it out to council members and staff. So it just went up this morning.
Okay, great. And the only other thing I would say, maybe during new business, is if we can plop it on the Elmo so folks can see it.
Yes, ma'am.
So sometimes visuals help.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Mr. Butler, for joining us today.
Councilmember Carlson.
Thank you, Mr. Butler, for taking this on, especially remotely. It's always great to have people with experience working on things like that. And thank you also to, I think you came via USF and maybe Angela Chris and her team. So if that is true, thank you to them. Also, they always find excellent consultants, including the one that worked with us on the Charter Review Commission. I'm always in favor of more meetings as well. The only thing I would suggest is, since you mentioned the trauma of the event that just happened, I wonder if staff could look to see if there's any kind of federal funding that we could get on an emergency basis to help pay for it. It might be more than we would be able to spend ourselves, if Mr. Butler has time. The other thing I wanted to mention to you, Mr. Butler, I'm sure that my colleagues have mentioned this to you before, but there were 2 resolutions that created this committee. One was the original one, and then it was an adapted one. You will hear in public comment, there are some folks who want us to go back to the original one, and so I'm sure you will be, but just as to let you know, you're getting instructions from the new resolution, but it would be helpful because of the folks that will be represented there if you also cover some of the things in the old resolution. The last thing is that you will find, even in a group that may be somewhat homogeneous, there are differing ideas. People have very different viewpoints, and I wonder what your consensus building process is, and how you might try to build consensus at the end, knowing that people may start with very different opinions on how to approach this.
Yeah, a great question. So the beauty of the work that I've done for the last 2 decades plus is bringing different viewpoints and perspectives together to come to some kind of a consensus towards a common vision and a common goal. So, we understand that we can't meet everyone's needs. I've managed an organization of 8,500 employees where I had the responsibility of what I call keeping everyone happy, which was near impossible as the director of work environment. And with that, we found what's the main objective that everyone can kind of live with in our approach to meet this objective. And that's kind of where I go with when I talk about consensus. So.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much, sir. And thank you again, sir, for your work. I wanted to ask Mr. Shelby, Councilman Carlson had brought up the resolutions because there's, how shall I say it? And we've dealt with this before. We've all voted on this on council without any dissent or anything, and I want to make sure that there's not any differing, how shall I say it, theories of what's happened. Mr. Shelby, so we passed resolution, and we've gone over this, sir, 568 back in 2020, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And to effectuate and turn 568 into a committee, that necessitated the creation of a new resolution, correct?
Yes. The original resolution from 2020 did not contemplate the creation by City Council of a committee.
Okay, so therefore, in order to create a resolution based on the idea that was originated in 568, we had to do a new resolution, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, good. That's all I wanted to establish. So, yeah, as we've talked about numerous times, we voted on the new resolution a number of times without any discussion. I was the one who brought this up before Tampa City Council. The community had been asking us to do this for some time, and I was asked on it on a show, WFLA, I believe it was, and I said I'd be glad to do it. It was kind of a funny question. I said, well, I'll be glad to do it, and all that kind of stuff. But I wanted to just note that because, again, the original resolution did not create this committee. We had to pass a new resolution, which passed City Council 7-0, which went through us numerous times without any dissent. So I just want to make sure, because the new resolution in no way gets rid of the old resolution. They actually work together. The second one was necessitated in order to give life to the aspirations of the first one, because I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page for everything we voted on. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Vieira, if I can just also follow up that there was a reference to the resolution that ultimately made the appointments was also passed by City Council, where it made reference to the Resolution 2024-568.
Yeah, and thank you. And that's what I'm saying, which is there's what is it, the Magna Carta, the Articles of Confederation, and the Constitution. They're all related, and these are all related. I want to make sure that they're not separated in any way in order to, with controversy, et cetera. Thank you, sir.
Only a lawyer could get the Magna Carta in that.
I know, right?
Mr. Vieira, if I can just share what I've found on the City Council's webpage.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Martin Shelby, City Council Attorney, there was a question regarding the information about the Racial Reconciliation Committee. Councilman Vieira did say that his office has been working with the administration and staff to be able to create that page. That is available on the city's website. If you go to the City Council's webpage at tampa.gov/City Council, there will be a column on the left that says quick links, Tampa City Council, and as you scroll down, it does say City of Tampa Racial Reconciliation Committee. If you do click on that, it does take you right to that page.
Anything else?
No, and if I may, and again, I did want to thank again Mr. Butler and everybody that's working with you. We mentioned Mrs. Angela Christ and others, Mr. Shelby, who's also put in a lot of time, my office, Brandon Jordan Lazo, among many, many others, and everything. And I will, by the way, I have to leave here. My son, long story short, has a play. I got to help out with some stuff at about 4 o'clock. So if I have to leave here early before motion time, I'll go ahead and make that motion. I'm thinking there's a certain amount of money that'll get it done. I'll make sure during break time.
Thank you very much. And again, sir, thank you for being here today. We appreciate it, and for the information, and all the committee members that are going to be meeting. In regards to Resolution 568, what I'm going to ask my appointee, my friend, who's on this board, that regardless of that resolution or this resolution, everything that's been brought up from 568 to this needs to be discussed, not just, there's different pockets and different, talk about everything, not 568 was canceled out with this one. I want everything to be discussed because this is the opportunity to do so and the purpose of this. You said something that I wish I mentioned earlier when we were discussing the hurricane. You said something along the lines of, it takes tragedy or a big event to bring people together. And I think, we in general, as mankind, we're an embarrassment because we spend so much time fighting each other. And it's always a tragedy. If it's not, a war, if it's not a hurricane, a natural disaster, we bring ourselves together. We should always be treating each other with mutual respect. And we should always be trying to work together and avoid conflict in general. And I'll read a quote from Kipling. It says, "We're all islands shouting lies to each other across seas of misunderstanding." And it's from The Light That Failed, which is from like 1907. And it's an interesting quote because we spend so much time in conflict instead of looking for resolutions. And I hope that with this committee, with this board, because each and every person that's on that board, I know most of them, many of them personally, they're wonderful people. They each have a different, as Robin Lockett likes to say, a lens, looking at the community from a different lens. And I think bringing all these individuals together, this team together, I hope and I believe that we'll be able to bring positive change. I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that this committee is meeting multiple times, and we're talking about expanding that and discussing it, increasing funding. I want all these topics to be discussed. I want Resolution 568 to be brought up. Why? Because I was here to vote for it, as many others, in 2020. Why? Because I signed that resolution, but there's just so much to discuss, so much to talk about, and so much to do moving forward. So thank you very much, sir. Councilmember Vieira.
And thank you, sir. I want to again be clear on that issue, Mr. Chairman, which is 568 and the resolution and then the resolution that created this committee, they're all intertwined.
Yeah, exactly.
And we voted on this numerous times in terms of the topics, et cetera. There's nothing that's being left out, right? I just want to be clear because I don't want there to be any misstatements or anything of that nature. They're all intertwined, and we've worked very, very hard to make sure that everything is brought to the table. I just want to be clear because that's the first time I've heard that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, Councilmember Clendenin, item number 4, you want to introduce it?
Yeah, this actually is timely with this passing of Helena, but we had scheduled this presentation because the deadline for small businesses to file with the SBA disaster loan program approaches on October 9th. So I would like to bring up a representative from the SBA, Small Business Association, Rick Morales, to highlight this important program and the benefits that it has for the small business owners of the city of Tampa. Mr. Morales, you have to state your name, even though I just said it.
For the record, Rick Morales, Public Information Officer with the SBA, the Department specifically of Disaster Assistance. So first of all, thanks for the opportunity and time. It's not our first rodeo. I have to say it, Florida, for me, I have been in most of the states of the East. Florida is always the most prepared and very organized. I was here in Nicole a couple of months ago in Tallahassee for a smaller presidential declaration, Leon County. So this one, we all know, is a very serious one. But of course, we don't want the constituents to be discouraged. For example, with our programs or federal agency, always the people find ways on how to use our funds, even though that we are not grants. That's why we are here today, like to give examples to illustrate how the constituents, the survivors, can use our funds, programs. We have funds for physical damages, economic damages, for property damages. That means that the homeowners, renters, nonprofits, and businesses can use these funds. If they have damages within the incident period, of course, right now, the incident period is open. The damages are supposed to be from September 23. Usually, what is going to happen is that the incident period is going to be closed within 1 week, 2 weeks. We never know, but they are going to close that incident period. I want to mention what deadline that is approaching. I know that Tampa didn't receive like a lot of damages from Debbie, but Hillsborough County had a lot of damages. So the deadline to apply for physical damages for Debbie is October 9. I know that a lot of citizens, we are a melting pot, so that's a very valuable information. And if the people with damages of Debbie didn't apply, they can go now and apply with Helena because those damages were from Debbie. So, but of course, if they had damages with Debbie, and they can apply for that, and if they had damages with Helena, they can apply for that too. What I want to say is that they can have an approved loan with Debbie and one with Helena too. That means multiples loans approved. So that's very important to know because this is not the first time that we have seen that multiple declarations at the same time. So that's not that often, but yeah, that happens a lot. So right now, we are encouraging the people to visit the DRCs and BRCs, disaster recovery centers. Those are from FEMA, but we were there too. We have CSRs, customer service representative from SBA. So that's one way of applying. For me, my 2 cents always that's the best one because I always like to speak with people face to face, to engage with them, and they can load documents, answer you all the questions. Instead of applying online, that's a good alternative too, sba.gov/disaster. I'll be providing also Irish material. To Tim, we have a good partnership, and with my colleague too, Timothy. So on the paper, we have QR codes, so the people can use the QR code to apply. So when you go to a DRC, when you visit a DRC, you can apply with both federal agencies. Same day, same building, no duplication of benefits. That's very important to know, that when you visit a DRC, you can do that. We have BRCs also, business recovery centers. Those are from SBA. If you go there, you can only apply with the SBA. So that's the main difference. Also, I'll be sending to Tim so he can share that with you all the addresses, centers, and times from all the BRCs and DRCs in all the counties on the south of Florida. So that's very valuable and helpful too. So I'm gonna mention some ways on how the people use these funds, even though that we are not grants. For example, if you are denied by SBA, specifically homeowners or renters with this one, we might refer them to FEMA, so that FEMA might, because we never know, they might give them ODA, other disaster assistance, like grants. In other words, at least they can have hope to receive something just by applying with us. That's a good option. Also, when we come into play, let's say if FEMA denies you, if FEMA approve you of funds but are not enough, or you received the check from FEMA, but it took a lot of time to receive that check. So that's another one. And that's one of the issues with all the resources that we have. The same is with the SBA. That's why we always recommend also in times of disaster, apply with everything. Because apply with FEMA and SBA, and because you never know from what part you're gonna get the money faster. And I like what the emergency management specialist said, that he mentioned a lot of resources like Red Cross, Salvation Army. I went to United Ways, visit that nonprofit, the United Ways, they have a lot of good resources. So I want to mention also the 800 number. I didn't know about the time. If you can give me a little bit more time to explain more benefits.
Can I have a motion to give him 3 more minutes?
We have a motion, second from Councilmember Miranda. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Go ahead.
Okay. The 800 number, that's the customer service center number.
Can you put it on the overhead?
Tim, can you help
Right
him
there.
put it on the overhead?
And there's the QR code as well.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, that, there, yeah.
Okay.
See, so different in comparison with the other states, believe me. Other ways are like the people that had insurance. You know that can take a lot of time too, like waiting for the payment or settlement. Instead of waiting for that payment or settlement, they can apply with us and they might get the money faster. So that's another way that the people use this. Even the denegation letter is important because that letter is saying why you have been denied. And when you go and visit other resources like nonprofits, other federal agencies like the USDA, they can tell you how you are gonna use other types of resources. They can send you and recommend you how to go to different places better because you have been proactive. So that's another way of doing things. So that's very important too. Also, in comparison with normal financial institutions, our interest rates are fixed. They don't change for the life of the loan. So that's why we are helpful too. Our collateral is up to $25,000. So that means that you don't have to put nothing in guarantee. That's useful too. And our limits are up to $2 million for physical and economic damages. So I don't want to take any more time. If you have any questions, that would be great to answer.
Thank you very much. Any questions? No, thank you very much, sir.
Okay.
I would just say if they could
Councilmember
show
Hurd.
it one more time.
Yeah.
And then if we could, Tim, if you could blow up the, just so that folks could see the phone number and the QR code.
Slide it up and blow it up.
Yeah, slide it up and blow it up so folks could really take a look at that QR code, that website, and that phone number.
Say the website out loud, because it's very.
Yes, okay. The website is sba.gov/disaster. The phone number, 1-800-659-2955.
And Mr. Morales, just to clarify, so the SBA provides low-interest loans
Yep.
for fixed rates, and if someone is looking for grants, that would be FEMA?
That's correct.
Okay.
In a nutshell, yeah, that's correct.
Okay, very
Yeah.
good. Thank you so much. I appreciate you coming
Yeah.
here today. Thank you. Very timely.
All right, thank you very much, sir. Mr. Shelby,
I
just for
can.
clarity regarding 67 and 68,
Yes, if I can, if you look at the the agenda, you have the, excuse me just a minute.
okay, so we have to take
These are the-
67, 68 before we go to general public comment.
Well, the way it stands is this. On page 15 of the agenda, the 10:30 public hearings are items 67 and 68. We just finished up the item on the, item number 4, and here we are, and it's now 10:35. Although it is not on the agenda, it didn't make it on the agenda. I will point out that the motion was made that the public hearings regarding this item, the Pinewood Development Agreement, be continued to October 3rd, and I'm reading from the minutes, 2024, at a time certain of 10:30 a.m. So
Okay.
council has a decision to make. Granted, we understand that there's public waiting to make a comment. These are public hearings, but it was council's determination to set this for a time certain.
Would council like to move to open these public hearings 67, 68, and then take general public comment? So moved. We have a motion from Councilmember Clendenin. Do we have a second? Second from Councilmember Miranda. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, we're going to go to 67 and 68, then general public comment. I'll be right back.
So we are, so we are file numbers of DA 248133. It is a public hearing, and who's staff presenting?
Is there a member of staff present for this item
Okay. No?
or online? Madam Clerk, is there anyone online from staff?
Okay, Ms. Feely?
Thank you.
Oh, we can't hear you, Ms. Feely.
How about now?
There we go.
Good morning, Abby Feely, Interim Administrator, Development and Economic Opportunity. Rebecca Johns with the City Attorney's Office was going to be present to present on this also. This is the Pinewood Development Agreement. When we left off last week in relation, a few weeks ago, got to get my days straight right now. There was a meeting to be held between the base, the developer, and the city. That meeting did take place in relation to the improvements and trying to see if there were opportunities to come to agreement into what should go in there. I believe that Mr. Gardner will be present to present the findings of that meeting and the intention of the developer in moving forward this morning. Is Mr. Gardner in the chambers?
I see Mr. Gardner in the chambers. Are you ready to hand it off to Mr. Gardner? Mr. Gardner, state your name, please.
Sure, Gardner, 400 North Ashley Drive, here on behalf of Brian Funk. And as Abby mentioned, we did meet with the base. I'll just say kind of, do you want to say something? Okay. We did meet with the base. We've always viewed the base as our partner in this. We think that as it relates to the hotel as well as this trailhead, they'll be a large user of that. And the direction from council was to meet with them. And backing all the way up to the design of this park, it's always been done in a very passive manner. We worked with the Parks Department to make sure that it was. And we came to that meeting with a spirit of compromise and trying to make it even more passive. And so ideas that we put on the table were, as you'll recall, the park has no restroom. That is not a forward obligation. So we said that we would commit on the record that there would not be a restroom facility. We think that's the biggest limiting factor in just human nature and human biology on not allowing people to congregate. Secondly, the City Parks Department was comfortable that this park would not be programmed, and so you couldn't have planned events, you couldn't have birthday parties, things of the like, so not a place for people to congregate. Third, we offered up signage that this is not an area of congregation, and really kind of back to the spirit, this is a trailhead, that, yes, does have parking where you could unload your bicycle. If somebody was on the trail and needed a bench to rest for a minute, they could. But again, with no facilities, this is a place for passing through. And so we presented that to them. I think you'll hear that they still have objections to that. But we feel that it's in the spirit of the city as it received the property through the DIGS program. We feel like it's consistent with the resolution, and we're comfortable with it. Again, happy to state on the record to do anything to make this as passive as possible, but we feel that we're acting in the spirit of the resolution, and we feel like this is a great thing for the city of Tampa. As you'll recall before, this was an area that was overgrown, and it became a large homeless encampment where people were literally living there. And we feel that having this cleaned up and having this in the spirit of a true trailhead, which is what we're trying to do, is what we're presenting today. So happy to answer any questions. We've got a full presentation. We've got the resolution. We've got anything you may want to see, but really wanted to, sound like the specific move from the city was for us to meet with them, and just wanted to report back on that meeting.
So before we get questions, I see Rebecca Johns has entered the room. Do you have anything you'd like to add before we offer questions?
Rebecca Johns, Legal Department. I just wanted to let you all know, because the question was raised at the last hearing, that city staff has looked for anything that established a legal description for the clear zone that was referenced by McDill, and staff had not found anything that established that clear zone.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm here if you have any questions.
And I see Mr. Mulkey's online as well.
Morning, Council. Tony Mulkey, Parks and Recreation Department, was in that meeting with the base as well as representatives from the developers. Wanted to kind of just provide an overview of the approach of the park space here and how we kind of view things. The development that's being proposed is very consistent with essentially items that you would find in a right-of-way. It really is just a maintained public realm space, a couple of benches within that clear zone that's been identified. There are other amenities in the right-of-way that are very similar. There's street parking, there's bus benches, the established visitor center that the base has had a waiver on, which also has public space as well. So this all kind of really conforms with those public realm amenities. And that's the approach that we took. We will not permit events. This is a pass-through space. Yes, there is some passive space in there, but that's no different than anything else in that area, except that it would be maintained, as it's currently not programmed or on kind of our maintenance rotation. So happy to answer any questions on that, and I'm glad to support it.
Councilmember Hurtak.
I would like to hear from the base.
And then we'll go to Councilmember Miranda, then Councilmember Carlson.
But I have a question about what so to me, it's not public comment. I have a question about their continued opposition to what is after their meeting. I think they're a very big part of this.
Yes,
Morning,
sir. Please say your
Councilman.
name.
I'm Tony Rodriguez. I'm with the 6th Civil Engineer Squadron with MacDill Air Force Base. And I have with me today Colonel McGee, who is our Mission Support Group Commander, essentially our city manager, and Lieutenant Colonel Neal with our Judge Advocate General's Office, as well as Mr. Parker with Judge Advocate General's Office. The MacDill Air Force Base we still would like to object to this development agreement. We've got, I guess the thing that's once again being lost here in the interpretation from the developer in the city is that where the park is proposed is within our clear zone, which is something that we've shared with the city for years now. This is a 3,000 by 3,000 foot box off the end of our runway, and this is an area of highest aircraft accident potential. So we don't want gathering places of people in the clear zone. It just does not make good sense. We've shared we talked about the last time, the ACUS study. We've worked with city staff on the last update of this. And within the clear zone, it is recommended no parks and no parking lots. Furthermore, Tampa's comprehensive plan shows no vertical development within the clear zone. So even if you were to have a parking lot, by your standards, those parking lots would need to have lights. Those lights would be considered vertical development. As far as Mr. Mulkey's comment about these amenities are within normal public right-of-way, well, this is a city-owned parcel, but this is not public right-of-way. A public right-of-way is like a street. This is not a public right-of-way. So we're here to answer questions from the basis perspective, from our impact to the community. We have over 19,000 members that work at MacDill Air Force Base. We have an $11 billion economic impact in Hillsborough County alone. So anything that would impact our air operations mission, it would not only be detrimental to MacDill Air Force Base, but it's detrimental to the community as a whole. So I guess I'll just leave my comments.
So my question for you, because this seems to be a sticking point that people have asked about, is what is the difference between having your welcome center there and having the public park?
Okay. The Welcome Center is, it's kind of a necessary evil. That is at the entrance to our base. There is no other location along our base boundary where we can have that visitor center to clear people coming into the base, other than at that Dale Mabry location. So we have an Air Force process for property that we own, of which we own the property where the visitor center's at, to get a waiver to allow that sort of function to occur. And that's something that the Air Force takes very seriously. Unfortunately, we can't do that sort of waiver on the city's parcel because we do not own that parcel. Lieutenant Colonel Neal with the JAG.
Councilwoman, good morning. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Matt Neal. I'm the staff judge advocate, the legal advisor to the wing commander, and I want to thank you all for the time to be able to be heard on this. With respect to the visitor center, as Tony said, that's something that we've ultimately obtained a permanent waiver for. He described it as a necessary evil. We need to have it in that location. We also have the ability to control kind of the access to that location. It's primarily military personnel who are there carrying out official operations. You know, a park in the clear zone off base, we wouldn't have that same ability to control access, especially when you're also including a parking lot as part of that development. And I do want to highlight, though, and I think the council recognizes, as we do as well, the importance of the relationship between the base and the city, which is why we're having this discussion anyway. And I also want to note that we are currently, as the city is, going through hurricane recovery operations right now on base with significant damage. And Colonel McGee, who's responsible for that recovery efforts, is actually here showing how important this issue is to us as a base. The parcel of land that we're talking about in the clear zone, as the council is aware, was obtained with a defense infrastructure grant in 2005 to 2006 with the aid of MacDill Air Force Base for the very purpose of avoiding kind of this situation we find ourselves in right now, and that's advocating for keeping the clear zone clear. In terms of the authority, I know that comment was made earlier, there's no authority for what a clear zone is. I would respectfully disagree with that, and while it may not be a statutory authority, there is the Air Installation Compatible Use Zone Study that was done in 2023. It's a 114-page document that has extensive discussion of what a clear zone is and what land or what development should be authorized in that area. And that is a study that's done at every Air Force installation in the Air Force. This is not unique to MacDill Air Force Base. The standards within this study are very standard to air installations, and it was also done with the buy-in of the Tampa City Planner, because you all are stakeholders, to make sure that they have the opportunity to review and discuss the issues in that ACUS study. That's how we colloquially refer to it. And in that study, it specifically talks about parks in Appendix A and says, in the clear zone, parks are a no. And that's for, again, we're not anti-park, right? But we are certainly supportive of safety of the community personnel, as well as ensuring that there isn't any obstruction to efficient and effective military operations from the base. And so that's why we're here. Again, we think it's very important to identify that position and, again, to continue that relationship that we have kind of with the city as we're protecting our military operations, but also the Tampa community. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Miranda, Councilmember
I'm
Carlson,
just,
Councilmember Henderson.
we'll go and take Ms. Henderson first.
Councilmember Henderson, Miranda, Carlson.
Thank you. I have a question for the military officer that just left the podium. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. So you received a waiver for the Welcome Center, which you have to apply for. How many people come through the Welcome Center?
That's a tough question, ma'am. I wouldn't be able to tell you the exact numbers that go through the Welcome Center, the Visitor Center on a daily basis.
I'll take just a ballpark. It would be 1,000, 10,000?
It would be difficult for me to give you a ballpark. If it was, it would just be pure speculation in terms of the exact number that come through there. But again, the entrance to that and then ultimately the traffic that's controlled through that is, again, for official operations for obtaining visitors passes to go onto the installation. And that's an area that's controlled by the military, and we kind of control the access to it. I understand the point. There are a number of individuals that go through it. There's always a point with a question, ma'am, and I get it. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So would you recognize that parking spaces where cars are parked and people at a very limited park that doesn't have equipment, where it is a major hangout park, would be less than the people that would come through a Welcome Center where you got a waiver for it, even though it's a necessary evil? I don't understand the difference between that and the number of people that would be utilizing a park of this capacity, because it's just really a few benches and a decorative space for folks, and then parking. People don't hang out in parking lots, it's just for parking. So what would be the huge significant safety that would impede the military base in a safety situation?
Well, I think, ma'am, that any time that we have development within a clear zone, we have to be analyzing that particular project, and are we increasing the danger kind of to the community and to potentially military operations? We've already talked about the visitor center that we had to receive the permanent waiver for, and I certainly understand that. What I would note is, as part of this development with the park and the parking lot, our understanding is that there's projected follow-on development of a hotel that's butting up against that parking lot. So I'm not sure that it's going to be as infrequently trafficked as suggested in terms of the number of people that
would you think it would be less people that would come through a Welcome Center?
Potentially, but it's still additional individuals that we're putting in danger. So we're just adding to already the risk that was assumed with the visitor center, as described by Tony, and as granted by the three-star general who had to grant the exception for the visitor center. We're simply adding to it. It's not canceling anything out with the visitor center or lessening the danger.
So how much danger has come to that space in the clear zone in the past 10 years?
Well, ma'am, we have not had an aircraft crash, but Colonel McGee and myself, and Colonel McGee can speak even more intelligently to this, we've both seen situations where we've had an aircraft crash, and I mean, it's a very unfortunate circumstance. We hope it never happens.
The question, how many?
There have been none in the last 10 years, ma'am.
What about the last 20 years?
There have been none in the clear zone in the last 20 years, ma'am.
What about at any time? Has there been any dangerous situation in that clear zone area
It'd be hard for
that
me
would
to
cause us to prevent, a parking lot?
Well, ma'am, in terms of it's the danger that's there, not whether or not there have been crashes.
It can't be too much danger if it's a necessary evil for you to get a waiver for the Welcome Center where lots of people come through. It can't be that serious. You had to get the waiver because it's protocol. Would you agree? It's protocol for you to do that because it is in what you consider the clear zone. So the procedure is to get a waiver.
And the procedure is for that waiver to come from a very high level because of the situation of where it's located in the clear zone. Correct. Because of the danger that presents.
And that's how you solve the problem, is you got the waiver. So for us as council members, when there's clearly no significant danger that has happened in the past 10, 20, 30, 40 years, why would this be such an argument for McGill Air Force Base besides that? When you clearly have a Welcome Center there that brings about a lot of people coming through there.
And because the severity of the danger that exists, it's not about.
No, it's not dangerous. We've already classified that because nothing has happened, and obviously McDill Air Force Base has done a very good job. So let's move on from that because clearly nothing has happened.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so if there was a dangerous situation, what would you do for the people at the Welcome Center?
In what sense?
In the sense of, since it is a clear zone and you have a waiver to have a Welcome Center there. If something were to happen that was dangerous, what is the procedure? How would you do that? Who's answering that question?
I don't know who that man is, but ultimately we would close down the visitor center.
Yeah, how do you do that?
Because we control the area and we simply close it down and we control access to the visitor center.
So as a courtesy, could you inform the parking lot people and the park people to close it down? Couldn't we do the same thing for that area?
We don't have any control over that
Right,
area.
but could we? Could we
Point-
classify
can I
the
do a-
same? No,
can I do a point of
no,
order?
no, you cannot.
Point of order.
Unless the
Excuse me,
chair.
Mr. Chair.
She's speaking.
The question is, a point of
What's
order
the-
has been raised.
I just, and I don't know if it is, but just for council procedure, if we could have a question and an answer, that's all for the officer. That's all. That's it, Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
Thank
That's
you
all.
very much. Yes, ma'am.
Whatever the chair is ruling on the point of
Yeah,
order,
what is
Mr.
the,
Chairman.
because I was in the middle of my thoughts, so I know it's tough questioning, but I think it's reasonable. The public is listening. I have these questions. I'm not gonna keep them to myself. We have to make a decision. And so me challenging the military, there's nothing wrong with that. That's not against the law, is it?
If I may?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and again, and Councilwoman Henderson, that's not my issue. My issue is just to have a question and then a time for an answer. That's it. If you want to take 6 hours with questions, you're God-given right. That's all. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Okay, so now, just like in the classroom, I forgot what I was saying. And the students usually help me out with that.
You were talking about it being closed, what could have authority for it to be closed?
Sir, no.
Okay, so the Welcome Center, if there was an emergency, you could shut it down. Is there a possibility within the scope of what you do, could you inform the neighboring properties to do the same thing?
We could simply inform the neighboring properties that there was an issue, ma'am. But the scope of the problem is not what happens after there's a danger. It's the danger to the personnel that would potentially be there or the persons that would be there if there was a catastrophic, crash or another issue that happened during that zone, which if the park and the parking lot are built there, we certainly cannot stop that if there are individuals there before the crash happens, because we don't know that it's coming. And that's why there's a clear zone. That's why there's the buffer that exists.
Okay, so let's step outside of MacDill Air Force Base. In a clear zone in the United States, have you all ever shut down a welcome center in a clear zone at other bases? Has that happened?
We've certainly shut down visitor centers. I don't know every potential crash that has happened at every base. And again, part of the reason why we have a clear zone that exists, which does exist at every installation, that is at every Air Force installation, there is a clear zone that exists to minimize any potential damage if there is something that happens during that clear zone. And that's the whole purpose behind the clear zone. But I can't speak to what other installations may or may not have had at their visitor centers, ma'am.
Okay. My last question, did you get the waiver to build the Welcome Center? Did you do it before or after?
Tony can actually speak to that a little bit more intelligently than I can, ma'am.
Yes. The waiver has to be obtained before construction begins.
Thank you.
Councilmember Miranda, Councilmember Carlson.
I'm listening to both sides. Have you met with the individuals that are presenting the case? Have you all talked about this case? And what was the result?
Yes, sir. On
On
Monday.
both sides. I'm asking both sides to answer this thing. I got to have some clarity here because I'm hearing one thing on one side and the opposite from the other side, and we're not even closer than we were before.
Yes, sir. Yes, this past Monday, we had a Teams meeting with representatives from City of Tampa and the developer team. And went through everything we're talking about today, everything we talked about at our last public hearing. Unfortunately, I don't believe we were able to achieve any new ground as far as a compromise that would allow a park to be built within the clear zone, which is our major concern.
Thank you.
Councilmember Carlson.
No, the other side answer, please, if I may.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So I want to give equal time.
Sure,
I don't want to.
sure. Councilman Miranda, yes, and I just want to say we absolutely respect the base. That was the purpose of the meeting. To clarify just some terminology, we're not proposing a park. This is a trailhead. It fits the definition of a trailhead. We worked with the city specifically on this. The city got the land, and I'm happy to do it on rebuttal, to go through the resolution of what it says, which I think is in the spirit of exactly what we're doing. But we came to the table on Monday with additional ideas to make this even more passive and less of a place of congregation. That's when we proposed, we'd state on the record, there will never be restrooms at this facility. will state on the record that this will never be a park that's programmed, so it's an area of congregation. We propose that then we'll have signage that this is not for congregation. This is literally for people to pass through on the trailhead. And I'll go through the resolution on rebuttal, but that was the additional information that we presented to hope to alleviate some of those concerns, and unfortunately,
And that was discussed at the meeting you had with the base.
that was discussed, offered, and not received.
Councilmember Carlson.
Yeah, first of all, South Tampa, McDill, you're in my district, and so this is of particular importance to me. I respect and understand the value of McDill through the Tampa Chamber. I've been involved tangentially with BRAC several times. Hopefully we don't go through that again, but I think as a community we appreciate and respect McDill. Also, very small thing, I was the cadet commander of my Civil Air Patrol Squadron when I was in high school, so I was trained by the Air Force too. Started my PR career by reading the public affairs manuals. But anyway, I've been in and around the Air Force, and I understand the importance of flight lines, of flight safety, and these clear zones. I think the question here is, can we? It doesn't seem to me like it has to be either or. It seems like there might be some room to maneuver. And so, let me set up a premise, and then we can get your response. But first of all, it sounds like we have to take the word park completely off the table. And I don't know whether it'll ultimately be under parks or mobility, but from what I recall that you said last time, when you all initially worked with the city to acquire this land, you envisioned that it would not be a place where people would congregate, but it was always going to be a pathway for the bicycle lane. And so I think originally the developer had proposed spending a lot of money on a park as an amenity. They've realized since then that it can't be a park, but if it seems to me that we should not call it a park, maybe, I don't know whether trailhead is the right word or something else, pass through just a component of the cycleway. So if you all were okay with that premise back then, I would say let's stay true on the park part of it. Let's stay true to what you all promised back then, or that you all were okay with. It's transient people would be on bicycles and they'd pass through, and let's not put any amenities there. Let's not even call it a park. So that's about, I don't know exactly, but about 2/3, 3/4 of the land that we're talking about. The other part of it is that little triangle on the, I think, western side, which is part of the parking lot. And I don't remember how many cars are there, but you had two concerns. One is you don't want people to congregate. As I look at it, people park their car, they're there for a few seconds, and then they leave. So typically people don't congregate. And it seems to me that the hotel also could work on prioritization of parking so that they can put cars primarily outside of that zone, but if they need it, that's overfill, but they could insist that people not stand there. And then you talked about the vertical height, which I think everybody would understand. We don't want to put obstructions. Maybe there's a different way to light the parking lot or light that section. We've talked a lot about the Welcome Center. One of my sons goes to school near McDill, and so I drive downtown Mabry every day. Yesterday, it was backed up north of Gandy, and so there were probably 100 or more cars full of people, really important people probably, going on base who were in that clear zone. And it seems to me that that's more of a risk than the Welcome Center, and there may be some other cases here. So my big question to you is, if we say we're strictly going to stick to the original premise of that piece of the land and only make it a pass-through, no amenities, don't even call it a park, is that acceptable? And then on the small piece that would have cars, is it okay that we maybe prioritize not using it, that we make sure that people don't congregate there, and that we use lower level lights? Would that be acceptable at all, understanding the concerns?
My name is Chris Parker. I'm an attorney at the Installation Legal Office. So to your first question, I think our compromise is the trailheads, the greenway and trailheads, and as long as it's a pass-through, we see, people will use their bikes and continue to go through. The proposals we saw was a circular trail, potential benches, and a parking lot, which which means that people are gonna congregate, stay there. They might even, kids, people will do activities there. I think, compromise there is just that trailhead, which was the original thought process from the grant, and to connect the two sides, the two bays. To your second question on the parking, again, it goes back to our main goal here, and the reason why we do this study, and we do it at every installation, is for safety, to limit as much as possible, to work with the communities to limit as much as possible, especially parking lots, parks, anywhere where someone will congregate. If you have a trailhead, people are gonna park there, they're gonna go, and they're gonna be gone for long periods of time. On top of that, I go to Gadsden Park all the time, and I can tell you there's vehicles there throughout the day that stay there constantly, and they leave their vehicles there. And that's what you tend to see at all parks. So I think our worry there is that parking lot will be used constantly. And that's not even to mention the hotel. So that parking lot is right next to the hotel, the proposed hotel on the eastern part of the parcel. It seems like that parking lot will also be potentially used for hotel parking, which means you again have vehicles staying there longer periods of time, and potentially people being there at those vehicles. As far as lighting, I'm not sure of the city regulations on lighting. I know usually it's vertical lighting in parking lots for most cities, so I can't answer that if that's a potential. But yeah, our issue with that is this is where our aircraft take off. That's why it's the clear zone. We want no vertical developments for that reason, and especially lighting coming from vertical developments can also cause an issue. One point that I don't think's been raised here is I think we have not analyzed the proposed hotel, the 5-story proposed hotel on the western side of the parcel. I think it's our request that instead of first looking at the development for the park and parking lot or trailhead, that instead we analyze whether, hey, the 5-story, that park that is going to be close to the clear zone, right where we have aircraft taking off, it also gets analyzed. It gets analyzed by FAA. It goes through that process. We see it as backwards. Why are we doing the park, in the parking lot for the trailhead, which seems to be connected to this hotel? Why is that analysis and proposal going first? When we brought that up at that meeting, they just said, hey, it seemed like you might not have that hotel and park without cleaning up this area. So it seems to us like the intended purpose is less the park or trailhead and more to make it more attractive for that hotel. And we have a concern with that. So what our proposal would be is, one, we stick to the trailhead, the greens and trails that we've always kind of been our position. And then also, if there is a proposed hotel there, that we analyze that first. It seems we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Councilmember Hurtak, are you sure? Councilmember Clendon,
Yeah.
Councilmember Hurtak.
Okay, gosh, where to begin? So, similar to what Councilman Carlson said, I had 32 years in FAA air traffic control experience and did a lot of this type of study and work in different airports. And just to be clear, so people understand and they're listening to this, clear zones are around every airport in the United States, not just Air Force Base installations. Clear zones are twofold. They protect assets on the ground, but they also protect the aircraft assets. So that's why they're established. That being said, I'm sorry, but this seems to be a lot of fuss about very little. This is a very low impact project in a clear zone. And, I think I said in the first hearing that, our airports have been developed, and specifically the Air Force Base has been developed in an urban area. In an ideal situation, these things would exist in the middle of Oklahoma, which some of them do, where you have large, swaths of land available to be able to do this, but we have to reach compromises when we have urban development. So I've just for clarification of the record, on the vertical development aspect of this, you're talking about lighting poles. We can't restrict Mother Nature. There's pine trees can be in these areas. We're not clear cutting this parcel. So, that vertical development is specifically to protect. You're not trying to save the life of a light pole. You're trying to protect the aircraft operation. But a tree could be there at the exact same time. So there's no difference between a 30-foot pine tree and a 30-foot light pole, correct? Anybody want to, just for the record, say, I mean, yeah.
Correct, sir.
Yeah.
30-foot obstruction is a 30-foot obstruction.
So, right. So we're not
man-made or natural.
Yeah. So we're not doing any of that. And secondly, and this is probably for city council staff, Ms. Jones, maybe some legal advice. Where we are with the city's position and the disposition of this land, the Air Force Base, again, critical infrastructure. We all respect our military and the role that the Air Force Base plays in the city of Tampa, what an economic driver it is, and for the defense of the United States. But for land development outside of the land that they own and this land that has been transferred to the city of Tampa, the Air Force Base's capacity here is just advice and counsel. This is up to the city to approve or disapprove this development, correct?
That's correct, and I think they acknowledged at the last public hearing that this was a recommendation.
Recommendation. I want to just clarify that. So, and it's the city of Tampa's position that this is the best use of this property to develop this as this park/trailhead and reach this development agreement with the developer.
That is correct.
Okay. And so, and what was brought up by the attorney for the Air Force was you discussed this potential hotel development. It's my understanding, now this is again not what we're here to discuss today because we're here talking about a development agreement for the parking lot and the park, but the hotel, this proposed hotel is not in the clear zone. Is that correct, Mr. Truitt?
Correct. And just to add briefly to that, because I think it's an important question, there's already been a hotel that's been approved. What they're talking about is a potential second hotel.
Right.
That is not on the table at all. So the fact of cart before the horse, that just doesn't make sense. And most importantly to that, this trailhead is tied to the obtaining the CO for Hotel 1 has absolutely nothing to do with Hotel 2. So Hotel 2 is mere speculation in the future.
Okay.
And we'll obviously work with the base if that is the proposal to make sure it fits within their height limitations and everything else. But I think the critical thing, which I think was missing or didn't connect on the meeting we had on Monday, is the construction of this trailhead is tied to Hotel 1, has nothing to do with Hotel 2. That's mere conjecture at this point.
Thank you. I mean, I definitely understand. Again, I've been in aviation for 32 years of my life. I understand the position and the proprietary position of the Air Force Base of protecting their turf, because that's what we do. FAA, Air Force, what you protect your turf, but we have to reach some semblance of compromise in these urban development, urban areas. And for me, and based on my background and experience, this is a really low density development. It's almost as potentially as low density as you could possibly get without leaving it as barren land. So it's I'm having difficulty. It seems like this is where government sometimes gets in the way of itself when we come back too bureaucratic and we allow, common sense to fly out the window. That again, we're not turning this into a fairgrounds. We're not turning it into Disney World. We're not turning it into, this major, project. It literally is a circular path. I don't see 500 people going out there just cutting circles on the sidewalk all day long. And we've got, as Councilman Carlson said, Del Mabry Highway is backed up with hundreds, if not thousands, of cars in any given day. The Welcoming Center, and I think you said yourself, the military grants itself waivers. It's a great privilege to have, to be able to say when it's in the best interest of the Air Force Base. And I have to thank too, for the Air Force Base's interest, the development of these hotels. It's one of the biggest problems we have with the military installations is being able to for visitors and staff that are coming in to be able to accommodate those in hotels, and having this type of development is a symbiotic relationship with the private community and the Air Force Base. So it seems to be good for, it's good for MacDill, it's good for Tampa, it's good for the area. So that's my point.
Thank you, Councilmember Hurtak.
Thank you. I couldn't disagree more wholeheartedly. We don't need to compromise. We absolutely don't need to compromise. I mean, at this, we are compromising our relationship with the base, in my view, by doing this. Because, I mean, I'm an avid trail user. Trailheads do not have circular paths. They do not have benches. Trailheads simply have a sign that shows you where you're going. I do not think a trailhead here is a good idea. The other thing about trailheads he's correct, parking. Any park you go to, I mean, I go to past Henry and Lola every day with my dog. There are people that camp there. I don't call them out. People need somewhere to live. But there are people that live there. They move from park to park because I recognize the cars over time. But if you put a parking space, someone's going to use it. So I am fine with it simply being a path through like it originally was intended to be. But my other concern is the concern that, well, nothing's happened. If nothing has proven that this week, 100 years since a hurricane has come through, what happens if it happens next week? A jet doesn't make, the thing about the controlling access is once you join the military, you belong to the military. If the military tells you to be in that space as a welcome center, that's their job. They have to do it. Even if it is a danger zone, that's what the military is. That's what agreeing to be a part of the military is. I am just shocked that people are okay with this. I would love and appreciate if the developer, I do not want to be creating this here on the dais. I believe that it should go back and you all should figure it out, how to have no loop, how to simply have a pathway through, just like we were supposed to, and then figure it out. But I absolutely will not do anything that compromises the city's relationship with the base. I am not willing to put anyone in danger who sits at a bench, lives out of a car. I'm just simply not comfortable with that. So I'm actually shocked that people are willing to think that compromise is something that's able to be done here. A compromise is simply sticking with what you had before, which was simply a trail, no loop, no bench, no open space, because the problem is if you leave open space, people will use it. They just simply will. My other option is, I mean, I don't know if the base would be willing to buy the land. I'd be willing to sell it. So I am wildly concerned about what if, because we just went through a what if, and it wasn't pretty.
Councilmember Clendenin?
Yeah, I think Councilman Hurtak, what you're missing is that there's no absolutes, especially in aviation. I think the Air Force Base would recognize this as well, that it's a lot of risk-benefit analysis. You know, there is no such thing as 100% safe aircraft operations. You run the risk of, there's safety risk in every operation that you run, and then you do analysis based on the benefits and the risk. And I think, and that's in everything, because again, we're in an urban environment. We're operating high performance, high speed, and sometimes dangerous aircraft, specifically at an Air Force base. Versus look at Tampa International and the potential impact. You have, we have very dense development around Tampa International Airport. Now they do protect clear zones and things, but there's still a lot of risk involved with aircraft operations. So there is no absolutes. You have to say, what is the minimum amount of risk that we're willing to accept? And I think we're not talking about building a high-rise. We're not talking about building an apartment complex. We're not talking about where people are living there 24/7. You're talking about a really, really low density. I mean, again, other than leaving it as feral land for chipmunks or squirrels or whatever, I don't think you could get any lower density than this. Again, there's a benefit to not just the Air Force Base. There's a benefit to the city of Tampa of having a hotel of this property. I mean, so it's like a symbiotic relationship between the community, private development, the Air Force Base, the people that work there. Back to the visitor center. That visitor center is not just for people that have signed up for the military. That visitor center is for folks that are doing business. I have to assume that the vast majority of people coming on that base are not actually military folks. You know, you've got people that are doing business with the military, you know, visitors with the military, contractors, and I mean, it's a city unto itself. So people are passing through that welcoming gates and those welcoming centers. There's a lot of folks transitioning through that area. This is not just enlisted military folks.
Councilman Miranda,
If I
Councilman.
may, I think the colonel wants to speak. He was anxious, I could see.
Sir, you were here first.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Please.
I'll rebut at the end.
I was just getting around here. Hey, good morning, members of the council. Colonel Rob McGee. I am the mission support group at Group Commander at MacDill Air Force Base. So not only a 28-year veteran of the United States Air Force, I'm also a member of the community since 1973. So I've seen a lot of growth and development here. Here's what I've heard a lot about the Visitor Control Center and traffic, two things fully responsible for. I've never seen them so popular before. I can tell you, both of those things that you've mentioned, nobody wants to be in them. They don't want to be in traffic. They don't want to be in the Visitor Control Center. I move people through the Visitor Control Center and I'm trying to use the theory of constraints to move them in under 10 minutes. I don't want them aggregating there. I don't want people in traffic. If you saw the traffic yesterday, as one of our members mentioned, I was the one responsible for that. I was responsible because we kept the Bayshore Gate closed because we had problems with the barriers. So there's always other reasons why things happen. What we focus on in the military when it comes to safety, which for me, there's two things here, there's safety and relationships. I'll focus on safety first. For safety, everything is measured based on, and you should know this from your time with the FAA, it's based on probability and severity of risk. An aircraft accident, I think we can all agree, no matter where you sit, an aircraft accident is a 10 on severity. The probability using history at MacDill, it's probably a 0 or even a 1. But as you start to increase the probability that one will happen over time, Dover Air Force Base, we had an F-16, by the way, that in this community, when I was a member of MacDill Air Force Base back in the 90s, F-16 went right through a Cessna, killed a member there. So you're looking at, I got it.
I was in the control room that day.
Yeah, so we're connected in some of the chaos. Also, as a member that sat in the port mortuary at Dover, Delaware, the only port mortuary in the Department of Defense, after an airplane hit a building called the Pentagon. Not really impressive to see what an airplane does to a human body. I can share that with you. We're focused I would tell you, if I said, hey, Colonel McGee's asking for one thing, I would say, I don't really think this is something that should be voted. I think if we're at an impasse, we resolve it between ourselves. And here's why. There's a very strong relationship between myself as a member of this community and myself as a member of the United States Air Force. I see that as well between the base and the city of Tampa. When I walked in here, there were a bunch of flags across the street. The first one was a U.S. flag, then it was a state flag, a city flag, and then I think it said Hilton Hotel. Everything I've ever seen during my 28 years fighting wars and battles and combat comes down to three things: fear, honor, and interest. My interest as the support commander at that base is safety. I don't know what the interest of putting a trailhead there, I don't know what the interest is. There's a million other places. As a member of this community, I can tell you where we can use another million trailheads. I'm not concerned as much about that. I'm concerned about what is the probability that growth and development will continue to the point where probability starts to go its highest severity. My recommendation is let us discuss the impasse and see if we can come to a resolution about what this trailhead pass-through should look like. If we can't, then I would recommend we come back at another time and say we could not resolve the. Now, I can tell you right now, talking to my team, and I've got a million other things. I'm trying to get a base out from underwater, but this was important because of the relationship with the community. MacDill has been to 2 BRACs before, and we got through it. BRACs are important, and so are relationships. You know what's at that base? Over 19,000 people and about $1.1 billion a year of support to this community. MacDill is the community. When MacDill says we have a concern with safety, and we have folks that, hey, say we want to bring in a trailhead, let us try and resolve that between us rather than bring it to a vote of folks that may not be as interested as we are.
Yes?
You know, I really appreciate what both sides have said, and it's where there's a possibility, there's a probability, where there's a probability, there's a possibility, no matter what it is. But I think that what we're asking for here and looking at And I remember from the last time we met, I think even the neighborhood said, why build the park? No one's gonna know where the park is at. No one's gonna be there, if I remember something to that conversation. And I think that these two individuals and both sides, the MacDill Air Force Base and the petitioner ought to meet together and come back in a couple of weeks. And I think possibly this could be worked out. And I'm just thinking for what I've heard on both sides. And I think this could be resolved if there was no park and it was just a point to go from point A to point B on the trail like it was originally designed many years back when there was no trail really. It was just designed that way and it's coming together now. And that's just my feeling, that I see both sides energized to resolve the problem. It's like wanting to get married. And maybe you gotta get divorced also. But what I'm saying is, I'm not trying to make it humorous, I'm trying to make this thing operational so that both sides are happy and MacDill is happy and so is the city of Tampa.
Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, if the visitor center wasn't there and the military didn't have a waiver for it, I really, wouldn't have an issue. But because it is there, it's hard for you to argue about something that is in the clear zone, that is a trailhead and a parking lot. It's hard for you to argue that point, at least from my perspective. And I don't believe that we're going to ruin our relationship with MacDill Air Force Base because we make a decision like this. I also believe that the staff has worked diligently with these folks for them to come up with a plan that is reasonable already. That has been done. The military base, MacDill, is just not willing to budge. That's what it seems to be the case for me. I think that they have gone back time and time again, even with our staff, to come up with something that is reasonable. And, MacDill is not interested in it at all. And so the thing that gets them in the position that they're in when it comes to safety is that they received a waiver within their own organization to justify the welcome center or whatever it's called. But it's still a place where people congregate, even if they're only there for 10 minutes. It doesn't matter, it's still people there. And that's where they come through in large numbers, to enter the base. So it's hard to justify, taking away a parking lot and not building a trailhead when you have folks there all the time. And yet you get to control that situation, of course, because you are the military. But if you are, a part of this community, then if there were a situation that is adjacent to you all, you would inform the community. And so that's how I see it. So I think that the work has already been done on behalf of the city, working with these folks to come up with a plan that's reasonable.
Councilmember Vieira.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question to the petitioner, to Mr. Gardner. If Councilman Miranda, and I know that we had continued this to give people more time to meet, I think if I could form a narrative, and not all council members are here, on this narrative, I'm gonna say, it seems to be that your project is very passive in nature, but on the other hand, we also want to be respectful of the concerns. And I think that a possible means to achieve that goal, because again, with the information that I have, I'm supportive with the information that I have. But Councilman Miranda had talked about additional meetings to at least give that some deference. I put that out there. How would y'all feel about that?
So, Truett Gardner for the record. First and foremost, it pains me that we're on opposite sides of the base, because I've always, and my client has always viewed this as really, it's a development agreement, but to me, it's a tri-party partnership between the city of Tampa, my client, and the base. That said, it was confounding to have this meeting last week where this park has been designed, or trailhead has been designed in a very passive manner, and to throw out additional ideas to make it even more passive, only to basically be told you can't do anything with it. And I think, and I'm saying all this because I think, like the base can give the waiver on the visitor center, it's council's authority to grant this approval based on the base's recommendation. But I think what's confounding, and perhaps if it's your pleasure, you can provide some guidance going into this next meeting, which I think would be fine. But I want to go just all the way back to the original resolution. This is 2005 when the city received the property, and highlighted in pink, once the city has possession of the land, they would be able to utilize other types of grants and city funds to develop the land for environmental and low-density recreational purposes. Further, the acquisition of this land will preserve the operational capabilities of the MacDill Flying Mission, provide a green space buffer between the base and the community, and provide more parks and recreation property to the citizens of Tampa. This is specifically for this property. Then we get into, and I think Councilmember Carlson, you had a great point on Trailhead, which is exactly what we're trying to do. We're not trying to do a park. A trailhead, and this is under the City of Tampa Parks and Recreation Master Plan, is defined as the starting or destination points for greenway and trail users, typically providing parking and support facility. And then, as Mr. Rodriguez said, they do not want vertical development. The comprehensive plan land use policy says no vertical development shall be permitted in the area mapped on the adopted 2040 land use map as the clear zone. When we think of vertical development and representing developers, we think of FAR and buildings. But I think further than that, it could be restrooms, it could be pavilions, it could be those types of things. This was specifically designed to not have any of those. So we are trying to create a trailhead, and we went to the base, to that meeting on Monday in a spirit of compromise to even make this more passive. And I think the frustration that we were having, and maybe some of even the council members are having, is we can't seem to get anywhere. And with that, again, I'll defer to my client on the willingness to meet. But I just wanted to put out there kind of, we're not trying to come from an unreasonable position. We're trying to get to yes, but we keep being met with more and more obstacles that we're trying to get through.
Good morning, Brian Funk, developer. I just want to add one thing to that for context. It's really important. The Defense Infrastructure Grant Application Form, which is incorporated by reference into Resolutions 2005-699 because it's the way that the city bought the property. It makes 3 material statements which support the proposed plan before the city today. Section 4-1, question number 5, summary project states, quote, the identified parcels are within the clear zone of MacDill Air Force Base. This was always understood and created the exception. They want to use the word exception. This exception has already been created. I appreciate everybody being here, and I feel like that it's sort of the one-armed fisherman that caught the fish this big. While we don't deny that the clear zone has an application, that is an incomplete part of the story. And I'm sorry that we weren't able to get together sooner, because I think if you had known that, perhaps you wouldn't all be here today, because that clearly carves out the exemption. This has already been deliberated upon, and this is the lowest intensity use that we could come up with. In the event that the intent of the parties wasn't already specifically stated, the Code of Federal Regulations, which is the same book being referenced by Mr. Rodriguez, states in Title 32, Section 256, Point 3, C3, under air installations compatible use zones, the following descriptions of accident potential zones are guidelines only. Their strict application would result in increasing the safety of the general public, but would not provide complete protection against the effects of aircraft accidents. Such a degree of protection is probably impossible to achieve. Safety is a relative term, end quote. Something for you guys to think about. So you have multiple layers of latitude under which you can effectuate this. This is low intensity. We've already met with them. We're not interested. We've been doing this for 2 years. Candidly, it was a very unreasonable approach. We feel like this is very reasonable. We're not doing anything to defy the military. Both my grandfathers were full colonels. My mom's dad was a base commander at Pine Castle, McCoy. My mom was born there. I have an immeasurable amount of respect for you guys. We're not trying to do anything to disrespect or defy y'all, but we feel like this is a very compatible use and a nice crescendo. You guys, we talked about the hotel.
No, you gotta talk
I'm
to
sorry.
us.
Excuse me. It's a nice crescendo from what is the hotel component, which again is for the base. We have nothing but you guys in mind. I mean, that's who our customer is. The second hotel that you mentioned, just so you know, we can do this without the park or parking. It just makes, the reason for it is because it cleans up that area. It's really.
You have to talk to us.
Sorry. The reason why we did it was because it cleans up that area and it helps us perhaps add surface parking. That's not to say we can't go back, propose a building with parking underneath, request a waiver, and say, okay, you know what, we're not going to do this park for parking deal, and it'll just look like that forever. This is a really good deal for the city, for the base, for everybody. We've scaled it down a lot. There's really nothing else that we can do to this thing. I mean, benches. I mean, what if somebody gets tired? You can tell them you can't stop here because you're too close to the runway. You can't be tired here. You got to go over there. I mean, listen to what we're saying. I mean, I think we're kind of getting splitting hairs here about what, I mean, somebody's gonna use this property anyway, just sitting there in abeyance. I'm not sure what, in this, here I am trying to do something for the city. I'm not sure why there's a problem. Candidly, there doesn't appear to be a problem under the guidance of the resolution. And I'll open up for questions. Thank you for your time.
very much. I have Mr. Shelby, Councilman Carlson, public comment, and then we're running out of time. Mr. Shelby.
Two things. Number one is a reminder, there are two items here, 67 and 68. It appears they're traveling together, but these are public hearings, and my suggestion would be that council do take public comments on both these items. You could take and combine them and do that. And just another reminder, council, is that you have an 11:45 time certain.
Councilmember Carlson, would you like to?
Yeah, just two hopefully quick questions. Brian, the suggestion from McDill is that you all meet and come back.
We just did.
Do I recall that you have some time deadlines that would prohibit that, or is it okay to come back?
Well, I'm sure we just met with them 3 days ago. I'm not sure what's gonna change, to be honest.
But do you have, you know, sometimes.
And candidly, a lot of this would have come up, why it's coming up now about the resolution. And I would kind of question the urgency of this. I mean, I saw an email from Mr. Rodriguez, August 24th. Our first reading was September 5th. We didn't even get an objection. Our second reading was September 19th. We didn't even get the objection until the evening of September 18th. So I could have come to this thing, I could have come to the reading 2 weeks ago prepared like this, but I wasn't. So we've had to go digging to confirm what we already knew, which is that this has already been provided for and considered. So all you guys are doing is honoring the originally proposed agreement, the agreed-to agreement. Mayor Iorio signed it. I mean, this is already, and I'm doing as providing the funding for it.
I want to ask McDill a question, but do you or Truitt have a plan or layout of the property, a map of the property?
Yes. In fact, I don't know.
So just while he's doing that to McDill, they have one hotel that's already approved. There's a second hotel that he's proposing, but as you said, we'll go through a different process. So that it will be subject, I'm sure, to FAA approval.
Just to speak to that real quick, so nobody over here is freaked out. What we
You
did
gotta
on that was we backed in, it was for the purposes, I said, okay, let's assume the biggest use. That way we know what our parking needs are. That way we can always do less. But if you needed more and we could have gone bigger, then you're gonna say, gosh, why do we
So
negotiate
that's,
more
my
parking?
point is that's a whole separate process that we
That's
can't
right.
talk about
One's
here.
got nothing to do with
So
it.
the question is, did you have that map or not? That if you look at the majority of the property we're talking about is the park. And so, my colleague mentioned selling or transferring the park to that property to McDill.
This isn't the master plan, I'm sorry, I know you wanted something.
Let's say that what we were calling a park or a trailhead, let's say best case scenario, we give 100% control one way or another to McDill. So then, where's the one that has the triangle going across it, that shows the clear zone? So let's say there's no amenities whatsoever.
I had Mr. Rodriguez's as well as the airspace
So,
analysis.
yeah, just the question of McDill, let's say you all have 100% control over that property, what we were calling a park or trailhead, and you can decide exactly what would go in there. So really, the question is this small corner of parking spaces, and I think the developer they're trying to do something nice as an amenity for the city, but what they're really interested long-term is having parking for their existing or future hotel. Their alternative would be to go outside that triangle and build a multi-story parking structure that would be immediately adjacent to it. And so if we're looking at what's safer, there's a defined clear zone, but accidents don't always stay within those definitions. So would it be preferable to McDill to have a few surface spaces there, or to have just outside the clear zone a multi-story parking structure? And then is there any way that McDill would, if given total control over what goes on the green space, is there any way that McDill would ever be able to come up with a solution that would allow stationary cars without people in them?
Yeah, I mean, Chris Parker again. I think to answer your question on the clear zone and then obviously accident, the one where APZ won, our position is essentially, and it has been, the compromise is the trailhead, and we prefer that. If you read that study, essentially it says those should be open spaces in the clear zone or agricultural. So go back to 2005 is we thought the intended use, And I think I don't think we'd be able to purchase. It's not an easy process because of funding and appropriations. But our use would be either to have it as is, or if it's a connection to the original agreement, trailhead, we would prefer that. As to your question, the clear zone is the area where our recommendation is strongest. We want to keep that clear. It's in the name for a reason. Outside of that, I think our recommendation would be, hey, there's concerns, and we tell you that risk, but we'd be more okay with that. This clear zone, especially that parking, and then obviously a trail that's not kind of the agreed to from the last 20 years use of the clear zone is what we're taking an issue with. Thank you.
Councilman Clendenin.
For the military, were you guys aware of, or before you started this objection about when the land was originally transferred, that these questions were basically asked and answered at that point, that the use of a park, the verbiage of park and the verbiage that was presented earlier today, were you guys aware of all that?
Right, back in the 2005 timeframe, when we worked with the city to get the state funds to purchase the land, we had an active discussion with City of Tampa on the Greenways and Trails alignment along the northern boundary of the base. And we saw this as an opportunity for the city to continue the Greenways and Trails across Dale Mabry and make that connection between Pinewood and Markham so that they could continue on along the northern boundary of the base.
But the verbiage that was agreed upon included parking, parks.
I believe the Parks and Rec reference was due to the fact that we were working with the Parks and Recreation Department because they ran the Greenways and Trails program. And as far as the other grants that were referred to in the previous stuff on the Elmo, so there was something called the CMAQ, the Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Grant Program, and that's how they were funding a lot of the Greenways and Trails. The CMAQ program kind of dried up. There's no more funding for that. So that's why we've not had any significant activity around McDill with Greenways and Trails. We were hoping that the 1 cent transportation tax was going to help us out and reinvigorate that trail program, because we really want to make that connection between Bayshore and Picnic Island and McDill Air Force Base. Certainly, we want to work with the city because we have a 25-year lease along our northern boundary, and we have talked to Parks and Rec about doing something at the northwestern corner of the base and trying to get that connection from McDill over to Picnic Island.
Well, it seems as though the competent substantial evidence was this question was asked and answered in 2005. So it's really, that's kind of where we are as far as the use of this property. So the use of this property, the question has been asked and answered. And so now we're just talking about this benefit agreement and not necessarily the use.
If I can,
Mr. Shelby.
Just for the purposes of the record, just a reminder, this particular development agreement is not tied to a rezoning. It is not quasi-judicial. It's a legislative matter, so your standard is a fairly debatable standard.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to take.
Please, yes, sir.
Can I get 30 seconds, please?
We have such little time. Go ahead, sir.
I have
Please
12,
say your name.
how about 12 seconds? I have a must say and a can say.
Please say
My
your
must
name.
say is thanks to your family for their service. What I can say, I've never met them before. I have been on the ground 90 days as the Mission Support Group Commander, and I am willing to sit down with them and try and come to a resolution. I'm asking for time to sit down. That's all I'm asking. I have never met with them until now. 3 days ago, I was in Mission Essential Ole trying to get electricity and wastewater to work at that base so we can bring our folks back on. That was the priority. This is now taking my priority. I'm asking for 2 weeks to get it in my calendar where I can sit down with them, invite them onto the base, get them through the visitor center in less than 10 minutes, bring them onto the base, and then sit down with our team to see if we can come to a resolution without any other folks being involved and saying, no, you have to do it this way, because then we both go away upset. I think we can come back together in 2 weeks together and say we've come to a resolution.
All right,
I'd like to ask that. If not, I won't come back in
wait.
2 weeks.
Wait, Councilmember Miranda.
Make a motion.
Okay. But we have to take public comment. Ms. Pointer's here.
In 2 weeks after public comment, so that we can have the two parties. I think they're coming very close to a marriage here, and I believe it'll be the best interest of both sides to have this conversation. We've had enough details today to fill a record book. But I think both parties, I can see by the smile on the face and change the attitude, I can look at body language and tell me they're ready.
And can I offer one more thing into the record that was missing, and I think it's important contextually, and is the airspace analysis. This is done by the FAA, so this is an all additional overlay. And so while the clear zone operates in a box, 2 dimensions, what this takes into account, what this takes into account, is the trapezoid, as a plane descends, the likelihood that it's gonna crash in this area, and then what can you do with the area that's not in there, right? So it starts telling you this many tens of feet, these lines, these striations are 10-foot increments. So what it's saying though, is that at this corner right here, I can go to 79 feet, but what we're saying today is that it's a bridge too far to put some benches and some cars right here. That's the part that I don't understand. That's such a quantum leap that I just, that
But I
was
think
never.
you all can work it out somehow.
Okay.
From what I
Yes,
see,
sir, that's what we'll do.
there's an opportunity.
Yes, sir, that's what we'll do. Thank you.
So before we go public comment, the 17th looks like it's open. Thank you. Looks like the 17th is open for public comment. So after public comment, we'll probably make a motion to continue this to October 17th.
All right, we have a motion and a second, but we have public comment. Ms. Pointer, come on up. This is on the continuance, I guess.
Yeah, good morning. Stephanie Pointer. I would like to point out that if the neighborhoods and the base had been notified at least 30 days in advance, as with every other land use change in the city of Tampa, we wouldn't be playing land development at city council. This is a problem created by our current code, that the city council or the city attorneys could make this deal with no input from the neighborhoods, no input from one of our largest economic engines in the city. I have been doing this for 5 years south of Gandy. I've never seen anybody show up in uniform before. Mr. Rodriguez has only been here once before, to my knowledge, to say anything negative about any of the development. So, at this point, I completely support this change. And I also want to point out to everyone up here, Mr. Clendenin is the only person who gets a paycheck from the city of Tampa who knows anything about any of this. So you have no experts from the city who have weighed in on this. Just like when we had to deal with chemical formulators, you had no experts to advise you properly. I don't care what legal said. I don't care what real estate said. They are not experts in flight zones. The only person who is Mr. Clendenin. Now, I'd like to also point out to you that the DOD and their little office outside the gate, guess what? If a plane crashes into it, the DOD has a whole hell of a lot more money than the COT.
Yeah.
You just set yourselves up. If you voted for this today, you would be setting yourselves up for lawsuits if it ever does happen. And just like Councilwoman Hurtak said just a little bit ago, my first thought was, things that we thought would never, ever happen, happened in the last 7 days. And we have to take that into consideration. I think that these folks need time to sit down at the table. You have to give them time to work on that. But this needs to change. This is a flawed process. Development agreements should not be done in the dark without notifying the neighborhood and the economic engines that reside next to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else here to speak on this item?
Motion closed.
We have a motion to close. Wait. Yes, sir. Come on up. This is on item 67 and 68. Please say your name.
Montez, not Tampa, Florida. You know, it must be some well-intended, there's some nice people that sits up there, and they're honorable, they're decent people, they're decent folks. And anybody who sits in those chairs, and those 8 chairs specifically, are really nice and decent individuals. They're really concerned about the community, irrespective of what they believe or their political persuasion or anything of that nature. So it must be the chairs. It must be something about the chairs that makes them completely stupid. It must be when they sit in the chairs, they come stupid. Any person talk about anything off of MacDill Air Force Base in reference to a safety hazard, it's like the mechanic telling you, hey man, don't drive that car. It's like the fire department telling you, hey, don't do that right there, it's a fire hazard. A military organization is telling you, hey, that's not a good idea. And someone who's probably never been in that area, I live directly outside the base. on Bayshore Boulevard, off of Bayshore Boulevard. And if you see the traffic there when it's or off McDill or off of Del Mabry, it's stupid for anyone to think that if someone's advising you with the knowledge of, hey, don't do it, or go slow, the city is always with the craziness. It more than likely, the background story is the developer is telling you, hey, this is how it's gonna start. And next thing you know, it's gonna look like concrete jungle, like what South Tampa is looking like right now. And when it rains, we have different kind of problems, like real issues. Who would think would happen in Bayshore Boulevard? It's not only because of the storm, it's because of development. And there's no proper drainage system. There's no proper planning system. And if we're talking about a base where we're talking maybe have to evacuate thousands of people, it can't be the rationale of the individuals, because they're all good-hearted and they're good-intended and they're here to serve the citizens of the city of Tampa. It must be the chairs that do something. Yeah. You know, it's a lot of good parents and it's a lot of good people out there. It's a lot of good Christian people out there. But it must be when they go to the strip club, them prostitutes do something to them. And the dancers.
Thank you very much, sir. All right, there's a motion to continue with a second. This is to October 17th. What's the time?
October 17th, 10:30.
Question?
Time, sir. 315.
No.
15 East Kennedy Boulevard, third floor, 33602.
Were you
We
the
have a
maker,
motion and
were
a
you the
second.
maker of the motion?
No.
No,
I'm the seconder of the motion, though.
Okay, well, the question, let me ask the maker of the motion, with regard to time certain, you saw what we had to do today, which was to stop at 10:30 to take this item up.
Out of respect that this is the third time, I think that's actually a reasonable thing to do.
Okay, as long as it's clear for the record,
All right, we
please.
have a motion and a second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. This is the motion maker.
You didn't say for those that say nay.
Any nay? We have.
Nay.
So the motion maker was Councilmember Clendenin, second by Councilmember Hurtak. It was 6-1 with Henderson voting no. Thank you very much.
So that will be 67 and 68.
Wait,
Yeah.
okay. Mr. Shelby.
Yes.
We have a hard stop right now, okay? Can we pick up when we come back from lunch with public comment?
The answer is, you adopted your agenda today with a hard stop at 11:45. You're at that point. Your question now is, do you want to then take this, whatever this item, I forgot, it's item 70, is it?
Yes.
Take that up, and then what happens, then you want to take, instead of the 1:30, the 1:30 is not at a time certain. If you make the announcement that you're going to take public comment when you
We
come
will
back
take
from
public
lunch.
comment immediately when we come back from lunch.
Okay, I'm sorry. Oh, we didn't, no, it's continued.
Yeah. Okay, at this, sit down.
Have to use the restroom.
All right.
A recliner.
At this time, if we could just pay attention to the TV screens up above. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Well, that's how I felt about my birthday cakes.
Hey.
Hey, pay attention.
I've known Charlie over 50 years. We were raised in the same Ybor City neighborhood Charlie did in what we call the projects, which is basically subsidized housing. I was a block away from Charlie. He had two beautiful sisters. I happened to go through school from the first grade through the 12th grade with his younger sister, Yvonne. And of course, I got to know Charlie that way as Sister Olga. I have good words for Charlie because he's been my good friend for so many years, even though I have a lot of joking with him and a lot of kidding with him. You know.
What do you kid him about?
Well, about his skinhead and things like that. You know, he tells me that only beautiful heads are bald and all the others are hidden with hair. But he hadn't quite convinced me of it. I think he's been a credit to the city of Tampa. I'm proud to say that Charlie's been my friend. I'm proud to say that he's been my councilman. And I think that he's done good service for the city of Tampa and certainly for his district.
When did you first meet Charlie?
I guess I met him in 1974 when we were both running for the first time.
What was your impression?
My impression was and remains, this is a wild and crazy guy who's very intelligent. Sometimes people don't figure that out until it's too late. Hilarious. And and really cares about this community. And obviously, if you wear a black suit every week, to every meeting because you don't want something, that's got to tell you something, and that was for the benefit of the community.
Charlie is a really smart guy, and he's a good friend. I remember a couple of times he was in the hospital, I went to visit, and he sat there and we joked and so forth and so on. And recently, I've had a couple of hospital stays. Charlie comes to visit. He does have all of his friends, and stays a long time and makes you happy. He's everything we've ever done in the city that he's been a part of. He wants to make sure it's in the best interest, and then if he doesn't think something's right, he'll try to do something about it. Charlie's done a great job. He really has, and I hope he has many years to continue to do it, because Miranda cares. He truly does. Charlie could write a book on collegiality, getting along with your peers, being patient enough to listen to something that you don't agree, but Charlie wants to know, why do you think that way? Tell me about it. At the end of the presentation, Charlie may not vote with you, but Charlie has given you the opportunity to express yourself.
And as a citizen, everybody knows him. How is that? So many people know Charlie Miranda.
He's Mr. West Tampa. That's the key. He knows everyone in West Tampa.
It's not easy to stay in office for 30 years, 50 years these days. What's the key to his success, I think?
Communication and being loyal to the people of the city and dedication to the city. That's supposed to be it.
I'm Mark Cacciatore. I've known Charlie Miranda for probably over 25 years. How he got there, I don't know. All right, they say Charlie Miranda, who cares? Charlie cares. I don't know what he cares about. But anyway, he must care about the right things because he has the people's support, people's love and dedication for him. He's a terrible domino player, even though he says he's good, okay? But otherwise, he does care.
Does he have a go-to meal at Catch First?
Whatever's on special. He's cheap. He's cheap. Whatever's on special.
And I've been a fan of Charlie since 1970. So what are we talking here? We're talking 54 years. Okay, and Charlie has done some wonderful things. You could always go for him. If he believed in what you were doing or saying, you would get his support. That's all I ask. Okay, so yeah, Charlie is a treasure for Tampa.
You know, the difference between Charlie and all the other elected officials in Tampa is that, there's a lot of politicians in Tampa, but there's very few statesmen. And Charlie's a statesman. He's iconic. And he's iconic on city council. He's iconic in West Tampa. He's iconic to his family and his friends. And
what makes him iconic?
Well, it certainly isn't baseball because he is known as the Bill Buckner of baseball here in Tampa. But I think what makes him iconic is the fact that he's a statesman. And I think that one of the things that makes Tampa America's greatest city is that we have Charlie Miranda in part to thank for that.
Charlie Miranda is an institution. Actually, I think he founded the city of Tampa, so he's been around that long. I have known him since he's had hair, so he's just that guy that's always around. He's sort of the voice of wisdom and reason, unless he's not. In honor of Charlie Miranda's service, again, as we know that he was one of the original founders of the city of Tampa, and he's been on city council ever since, we are going to name the community investment tax after him. So heretofore, it will be known as the Charlie Miranda Community Investment Tax, just in his honor. He'll love it. He will love it.
So you had one or two people that care about you show up.
Well,
Yes.
I appreciate it very much, but would you like to debate me on that tax?
No, sir, I would not.
Well, thank you very much.
I'd like to amend the motion to name the stadium after him.
Yeah, there you go. We'll just keep it moving here. But I tell you, it is such an honor for me, and I know everyone else in this room here. And Charlie, we paid no one to show up. So
I did.
They are, okay, there you go, without a doubt. But what an occasion. Tomorrow, it will be October 4th, 1974 is when a very young Charlie Miranda walked in, was sworn in, and took a seat on that very dais. And he has served, same seat, maybe the same
Same
chair.
seat.
Okay, well, we've changed chairs a few times. But anyway, we do want to congratulate you on that incredible, incredible accomplishment. For 3 of the 5 decades you have served this community, and you have done that with a level of civility, respect, dignity. You know, you have always been known to be the individual that isn't afraid to compromise. You listen to everyone. You know this city. You know the issues that affect the community. And quite often, you are the voice of reason, except when it comes to baseball. But you really are. And it is true what the individual said before, and that is always on your sign. Who cares? Charlie cares. And people know that, and they respect that, and they admire you for it. And I speak for myself, but I think I speak for a lot of others. I have learned so much from you about the importance of being kind, of listening, and your duties as a leader, those responsibilities to work hard every day to lift our city up and to grow it to the potential that we know that it has. So I personally want to thank you for your service. I know everyone is here to thank you as well, but I know that council has some incredibly important business to do here.
Well, so item number 70, if you've looked at the agenda, this is an ordinance being presented for first reading, and it's approving the naming of the Brick Plaza and Courtyard, which is right outside.
Second, I want to do
Wait.
second.
No, I'm not.
I want to say it for everybody else.
Yeah, I'm just saying what it is before we read it, but between Old City Hall and the Tampa Municipal Office Building outside to be named Charlie Miranda Plaza in honor of Councilman Charlie Miranda and his almost 30 years of service to the city of Tampa and its citizens as a member of the Tampa City Council and community leader. Who would like to read it?
Mr. Chairman, I have to excuse myself. I may be contradicting some law.
Go ahead, Councilmember Henderson.
Yes. This is Jefferson Dragon territory here. With great pleasure, file number HL 249126, an ordinance being presented for first reading consideration. An ordinance of the City of Tampa approving the name of the Brick Plaza and Courtyard located between Old City Hall and the Tampa Municipal Office Building as the Charlie Miranda Plaza in honor of Councilman Charlie Miranda, Jefferson Dragon, and his almost 30 years of service to the city of Tampa and its citizens as a member of Tampa City Council and as a community leader, providing an effective date, is that how you say that? Non-pro-tung, as of October 3rd, 2024.
Who's the seconder? Second from Councilmember Clendenin. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye. Let me just say this. When she said Jefferson Dragon, you know, people ask you all the time, what school did you go to? And they ask me, did you go to high school? I said, I never went to high school. I went to Jefferson. Yes. And the reason for that, there was only 3 high schools, Hillsborough, Plant, and Jefferson. And we had to compete in track. We didn't have a track to run on, but we had to compete. We had to compete in baseball. We didn't have a baseball diamond in Jefferson. And before I got there, the basketball guys and girls, they didn't have a basketball gym. They had to practice in the dormitory, which was just a stage about the size of this room right here. So we were always underrated, but we won a few. But it's an honor to be here. It's an honor to have had the opportunity to meet so many good people all my life. I was very honored when I first got elected in '74 that I worked with Kathy Barger, the first female ever elected, and then I worked with the twins, Jan Platt and Sandy Freeman. I sat here, Freeman there, and Duncan there, and Duncan said he couldn't read, so he would give it to Sandy. Sandy would pass it to me. At that time, you couldn't say I passed 1 through 80. You had to reach each one individually and read them out. So I'd read this whole thing, and then I hand it back to him. He tells me, did you see that beautiful girl in the second row? And I said, I thought you told me you couldn't read and you couldn't see. But those are the things that I remember, and Friedman and Platt, and it was an honor to serve with all those individuals. It was, it's really like a dream. 50 years is a long time, but when you look at reality, it's just a blink of an eye. It passes so quickly. You got to enjoy yourself. Make sure you don't hurt anybody's feelings. Go on and live your life, because it's a short period of time.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And sir, let me just say that, you know, how people ask me, how did you get involved in the city? 1 year run for city council, and I'll say that you and Pam Iorio and the mayor were the first 2 people that I talked to that inspired me to run, and I want to thank you for that. Congratulations.
That is so beautiful, Guido.
You got to announce the vote in the second reading. I know.
You also got the second? It was
Can I say before she does that, I think we should recognize that for Councilman Miranda to have this type of group show up for him, I look out in the audience and I see business leaders, some of the powerhouse attorneys in the audience, our former state senator. We have at least 3 former mayors and a current mayor, the department heads of the city of Tampa. I mean, this is a who's who. And Congresswoman Kathy Castor sitting back there, pretty in red as always. That's pretty impressive, Charlie, too. And I am very appreciative of being able to serve on council with you and to learn from you, to absorb some of your wisdom, and to actually be able to give some of my sense of humor to you, since you so lack it. So it's a give and receive relationship here. And those of us that are follically challenged.
We go to the same barber.
Well, I'll say we're not done. Although Charlie has served for 50 years, I don't think that the outdoor festivities are going to go on for 50 years. But we are going to go downstairs for lunch with everyone, and we have some further commemorations down there and gifts to provide to Charlie for his years of service. Did you need to read something?
If I may, I just want to say thank you to everyone that's here that came. And if you don't mind, I'd like to introduce my family. Would you stand up? In the back, you have Ryan and Luke, and you have my son Frank and Yvette and Danette, and my 2 sisters, Yvonne and Olga. And I think most of the grandchildren are here. I'd say Megan, Jillian, Erica, and I don't see who else, but they're all here, I think. And thank you all for being who you are, supportive, and I've used all your money to run for campaigns, so there's nothing left.
Mr. Massey.
Morris Massey, Legal Department. I don't mean to interrupt long, but I just wanted to make sure you all were aware that the mayor has signed an executive order also confirming the name of the plaza in Charlie Miranda's honor, and that needs to be received and filed. That's part of the renaming process. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file that. All in favor? Aye. And then please read the vote, Charlene, for the second reading and everything.
Motion carried unanimously. Second reading and adoption will...
Wait a second, I'm sorry. I just want to be clear on that. I believe there was a no. That was just a joke.
You really want to be a no?
Okay.
No, I didn't say that.
Okay. It's unanimous.
Motion carried unanimously. Second reading and adoption will be held on November 7, 2024 at 10 a.m. in City Council Chambers, 315 East Kennedy Boulevard, 3rd floor, Tampa, Florida, 33602.
All right, we're in recess till 1:30.
All right, everybody come down.